Starting off with a total betrayal, Mira is pinned to the floor by a royal decree that changes everything. This man demands silence while he prepares to ruin her life. The news spreads through the city like wildfire. Mira is officially labeled a false saint and kicked out of the kingdom for good. But to understand how everything fell apart, we need to go back to the beginning. The kingdom of Rhoidaris has long stood as humanity's last fortress against the darkness. Monsters roam the world freely, and the capital remains the only truly safe place left. For the past 100 years, a deadly miasma has poisoned the land. The only thing keeping humanity from total extinction is the power of a saint's prayers. Stories spread across the kingdom about how Rhoidaris suffered for 80 long years until Mira appeared, bringing a peace no one thought possible. Even the marketplace buzzes with gossip, as everyone becomes convinced that a royal engagement between Mira and the prince is only a matter of time. To the people, Mira is more than just a saint, she's a beacon of hope, the one light capable of leading the kingdom toward a brighter future. Deep in her morning ritual, Mira focuses her energy on the glowing orb while performing her duties as the saint. An attendant interrupts the silence to get her attention. The meditation comes to an end as Tur announces that breakfast is ready. Mira turns around with a gentle smile and promises to join them shortly. Reports suggest the barriers are holding, but Mira can still feel the presence of monsters growing stronger each day. She is determined to stay focused so she can ease the fears of the people she protects. Tur notes that the upcoming royal engagement is exactly what the kingdom needs to boost morale. Mira looks at her friend with a soft expression, hoping this union will truly bring happiness to the citizens. The guards lead the way as the long-awaited meeting finally arrives. Mira greets Prince Arthur with a formal bow, unaware that the mood in the room is about to take a dark turn. Instead of a warm greeting, a rough hand shoves her back with enough force to send her crashing to the floor. Tur cries out in shock as the saint is suddenly treated like a common criminal. Arthur looks down at her with pure contempt and shuts down any attempt to protest with a single word. He adjusts his glove while warning her never to speak his name so lightly again. Arthur hits her with the ultimate accusation, claiming the high priest himself exposed her powers as a complete fake. The guards close in while Tur fruitlessly reminds the room of the miracles they've all seen, but the prince just finishes his cold accusation. Laughing at their desperation, the prince drops a bombshell. They found a real saint and our MC is officially banished from the kingdom. Shock hits hard as Mira asks if this is truly her king's wish. With the king bedridden, Arthur makes it clear he's calling all the shots now, leaving her with no choice but to accept her fate. She gathers what's left of her dignity and prepares to leave the capital with her only remaining ally. Out in the public square, the royal guards broadcast her disgrace to the entire city, announcing that a new saint named Marielle has taken her place. The messenger drops a massive bombshell, announcing the high priest was in on the scam and is already behind bars. He starts naming a replacement while our girl keeps her head down and keeps moving. The crowd is losing it, begging for answers as they watch their supposed saint head for the exit. They can't believe their eyes and keep shouting her name into the void. The vibe shifts from confusion to pure betrayal, with people wondering if they were just being played this whole time. Rumors of her exile spread through the mob like wildfire. Things get ugly fast as the citizens start accusing her of laughing at them behind their backs. They're done being played for fools and let her have it. Shouts of fraud follow her every step, but Mira tells her worried attendant she's doing just fine. Even with guards holding them back, the people are officially over her. Someone finally snaps and starts chucking rocks, even though others warn about catching a curse. Meanwhile, a certain someone in the shadows is clearly enjoying the show. Mira gives them one final, elegant bow before checking out for good. She's keeping it classy even while the world burns behind her. Outside the castle walls, the mood is ruined. Mira realizes the prince never intended to listen because he had this whole plan ready from the start. Her attendant is fuming, calling the treatment cruel and asking why Mira did not just use her popularity to fight back. There is a big secret at play here. Mira is actually the third princess of Itis, and her attendant knows that revealing this truth would have changed everything. She wonders if it is even possible to help people without revealing her true identity. Back then, this whole mission started with a personal request from the king of Rhoidaris. He begged her to come as a wandering saint instead of a princess, and she accepted the duty with grace. Her brother was not a fan of the idea. He was worried that sending a 15-year-old girl out without protection was just asking for trouble. Her mother gave her some final parting words as she prepared to leave. It is not just about the title, it is about loving the people so they love you back. Determined to make them proud, she sat in the carriage and made a vow to use her powers to bring peace to the world. Mira looks back at the throne room where the betrayal went down. She knew she could have shut everyone up just by flexing her powers, but she chose to stay quiet instead. Even if she proved her worth, Arthur probably would have just found another excuse to kick her out. Fighting back would have only led to force, and that is a road she was not willing to take. Our girl realized the only people getting hurt in a struggle would be the soldiers just following orders. Tur watches her closely, knowing the weight of the choice Mara just made. Looking back, this whole setup felt way too polished to be an overnight job. Arthur used to be kind and considerate, but this calculated betrayal proves that version of him is long gone. There is officially no reason to hang around a place that treats her like trash. It is finally time to cut ties and head back home to Itis. Since a new saint is supposedly in the mix, Mara knows her old barrier will only hold the newcomer back. She prepares to drop the magical seal that has been protecting the land for years. With one final gesture, she releases her hold on the kingdom's protection. She accepts that she is no longer needed and lets her power fade into the wind. No time to waste as Mira and Tur hit the road. It is a long journey back home to the Itis border. Safety is the priority, so Tur plans a stop at the nearest town first. The goal is to visit the Adventurers Guild for some extra muscle against the monsters and bandits lurking on the path. They decide that hiring guards is the only way to survive the rough territory ahead. Mira agrees that they have to be careful as they move forward. Looking back at the castle one last time, Mira offers a final goodbye. A simple wish for luck is all she gives before turning her back on the city for good. A nightmare from the past. Monsters tear through the kingdom while a lone survivor flees for their life. They can only gasp for air as the memory of a saint flashes before their eyes. The scale of the disaster is staggering. From the hilltop, the city is nothing more than a graveyard of smoke and embers. Back in the present, things are much calmer. Mira and Tur reach a nearby town just before the sun sets for the day. Welcome to Tamatriza, a bustling hub right on the border of Itis. It's the perfect place to hide while they figure out their next move. After checking into an inn, Mira takes a moment to herself by the window. Her peace is interrupted by a soft knock at the door. They can't risk being recognized. Tur provides a plain cloak to hide Mira's royal features before they head out to meet their contacts at the guild. The guild hall is packed with hardened warriors and rough types. As Mira steps into the room, a scarred veteran immediately notes her arrival. The girls head to the desk to hire an escort under their fake names. The clerk notes that everyone is trying to leave town right now, making guards hard to find. There is one person available, but he is busy on another job and won't be back until tomorrow morning. That is when these sketchy dudes step in. The scarred veteran and his crew offer a special rate if the ladies want to leave immediately. Mira keeps it classy and declines the offer with a smile. They would much rather wait for the professional tomorrow. These guys do not take rejection well and try to follow them. One thug tries to grab her, but he slams into an invisible barrier instead. The bald guy is reeling from the impact while his boss tells him to stop acting like a moron. He tries to explain that a wall just appeared out of nowhere. They search the street, but Mira and Tur have already vanished. The boss is livid that they lost their chance to score. Tur watches the street from the window, sensing the danger closing in. She insists they leave Roideris territory immediately because the rumors about the false saint are already spreading. Mira is confused about how they can afford an inn and new clothes after leaving with nothing. Tur admits that Lady Ada secretly gave her some valuables for protection before they left Itis. Tur looks at the bag of gold on the table, remembering she was told to sell the items only as a last resort. It hurts to know they have actually reached that point. Mira sits in the quiet room and thinks about her brother back home. She just sent word of her engagement, and now she has to return to him as a disgraced exile. Tur is not going to let this betrayal go unpunished. She knows the people of Itis and her own family will never forgive Roideris for what they did to her lady. The conversation shifts to the gossip Tur picked up at the guild earlier today. She heard some very detailed stories about the girl who is supposedly the true saint. The kingdom is pushing a girl named Marielle, a 16-year-old noble with the classic golden hair and blue eyes. They are claiming she was the one performing miracles in secret all along. The kingdom's propaganda machine is working overtime, claiming this new girl Marielle was doing miracles in her sleep while Mira's squad stole all the credit. Tur explains that these rumors were likely planted long ago. Skepticism remains about why this long-lost niece was only discovered right now. The story goes that Marielle vanished 10 years ago during a monster attack and was only recently plucked from an orphanage by her uncle the Count. The timing matches the fall of a southern kingdom perfectly. If even the high priest is backing this girl, the claim might actually be legitimate. Tur gets real and points out that the prince couldn't have pulled this off alone. This country planned the betrayal from the start, so there is no reason to keep worrying about them. Our MC finally decides to let her brother handle the mess she left behind. A long journey starts tomorrow, and she is finally ready to move on. While the candle burns low, Mira thinks about the secret nature of her unique barrier. Her power is so strong that other saints, even her own family, can't use their magic when she is around. Looking out the window, Mira can't believe how much her life changed in a single day. She wonders if her inexperience or lack of compatibility led to this, but honestly, she has no clue. She remembers the fall of Redai, a kingdom that had its own saint but still got wiped out overnight. The aftermath was a nightmare of monsters and refugees flooding everywhere. It will take about 10 days for her original barrier to completely vanish. If the new saint, Marielle, cannot hold back the tide, Things are going to get ugly fast. The vision of absolute chaos haunts her. Without a proper defense, this entire country is doomed. She steps away from the window as the sun begins to rise. Even if she does not have a place here anymore, she wonders if there is really nothing left for her to do. Next morning, they are keeping it low-key at a local inn. Tyr feels bad about the downgrade, but Mira tells her to drop the titles and call her Maria instead. Back at the guild, the receptionist announces that their escort has finally arrived. She promises this guy is a professional and will not pull any weird moves on them. The receptionist shouts for Raul, a hooded dude sitting alone at a table with a giant wrapped sword leaning on his chair. Mira approaches from behind with a quiet rustle of her cloak. Raul slowly turns his head and the intensity in his eyes says he is not here to play. The journey officially kicks off as Raul leads the girls through the winding back streets of the city. He already knows that Mira and Tyr are basically walking targets for any thug with a brain. Looking at them, he notes that a girl with special circumstances and her maid make for some very perfect prey. Tyr is not playing around and looks ready to draw a blade when Raul gets a bit too blunt about their situation. Raul just tells her to calm down, explaining that looking like an easy mark is exactly why they are in danger. He points out the massive red flag in their current outfit. Combining clean clothes with a filthy cloak is a dead giveaway that they are rich people trying to hide, which only draws more eyes. He is not interested in their secrets, but he does want them to blend in properly. Raul gives them a simple choice, stating that if they want to avoid getting jumped by every lowlife in town, they need to stick with him. He starts walking toward their next destination without waiting for a reply. They arrive at a local gear shop specifically designed for adventurers heading out on long trips. The place is packed with everything from swords to survival supplies, and the shopkeeper looks like she has seen it all before. Raul asks if the princess can actually handle any magic, and Mira keeps her cover low by saying she only knows a little bit. He assures her that this shop is a safe spot where nobody is going to leak their info to the public. Mira ends up trying on a new cloak that features some surprisingly cute cat ears on the hood. Raul thinks it actually suits her perfectly, while Mira is just shocked by her new tactical feline aesthetic. Silver hair is a total beacon for trouble, so Raul makes sure she stays hooded. The cat ears might be cute, but being caught is not. Hiding her identity is a first for her. A small burst of magic should help her blend in even better. With a quick spell, Mira changes her hair color on the spot. Raul instantly grows suspicious of the magic she used, forcing her to laugh it off as a simple trick. The last thing she wants right now is for anyone to discover who she really is. The journey ahead is no joke, with at least 2 weeks of walking to the border. Nature and the elements are not making the trip any easier. Logistics are handled with professional ease as Raul stocks up on essentials. Blending in as common travelers is finally starting to feel real. Everything is packed and ready. It is time to leave the city behind. The group heads for the mountains with Raul doing most of the heavy lifting. He keeps it professional, telling them to drop the formalities and just use his name. Raul keeps his focus on the trail while Mira questions his unique appearance. Red hair and dark skin are a rare sight for her. While others see it as an omen of ruin, she finds the color beautiful. A sudden question about his origins and Redai hangs in the air. A passing carriage breaks the silence of the wilderness. The road is getting crowded with people fleeing the capital. Word about the fake saint is already driving everyone into a panic. Replacing one saint with another is a messy business. Raul points out that these exiles usually happen when things have already turned toxic behind the scenes. Lands that lose their saints tend to face a grim future. It is better to leave before the inevitable disaster hits. Faith is a fragile thing, and a saint's protection is never a sure bet. This kingdom might be the next one to collapse under the weight of its own lies. Mira looks down, coming to terms with how little she knows about the world outside her palace walls. Raul doesn't sugarcoat it, telling her that the real education starts right now. A massive landslide has completely obliterated the mountain pass. With the road blocked by tons of rock, every traveler is stuck in a massive traffic jam that could last for months. The group studies a map to find another way, but the risks are too high. Raul points out that the unstable ground and bad weather make a foot journey through the mountains a suicide mission. Safety comes first, so they decide to hole up in the local town until the road is fixed. It is a frustrating delay, but staying alive is the priority. Raul is a professional through and through, letting them know he will be charging for the extra days spent waiting. Mira is just glad to have him on the payroll. The door slams shut as Raul leaves, leaving Mira and Tyr to talk. Tyr mentions that the best travel partners are the ones who challenge you to grow and stay sharp. Thoughts of her brother bring a small bit of comfort to Mira. He is a kind and level-headed man who understands the value of peace. A rendezvous with him is their best hope for the future. Mira looks back at the room, worrying about the chaos she left behind in Roydara's. She hopes the new saint can handle the fallout while her brother keeps his cool during the coming investigations. Time is not on their side, and Mira is not willing to just sit around and wait. Staying put feels like a risk she cannot afford. Letting the journey drag on only gives the rumors more time to grow. If news of her exile reaches her brother in the worst way, he might lose his composure. She needs to reach him and tell her story in her own words. Clarifying the situation is the only way to keep the peace. Tuer is not feeling as merciful, pointing out that the kingdom brought this disaster on themselves. She thinks the people of Roideras got exactly what they deserved. Standing her ground, Mira recalls the promise she made to her mother about being a saint who truly loves the people. She cannot just turn her back on her duty now that she has lost her place. She explains her brother's intense personality with a small smile. If he cannot find her, he will probably tear the entire kingdom apart searching for her. Tuer knows Mira's heart too well. Not surprised at all, she watches her princess refuse to sit idly by while the clock is ticking. A logging path offers a way around the landslide. This detour is slow, but it beats wasting days waiting for a cleanup crew. Guilt starts to weigh on Mira, thinking she is holding her friend back. Tuer just brushes it off, reminding her that protection is in her job description. A new plan is formed to split the group. While Mira sticks with Raul on the detour, Tuer will take the high mountain path to scope things out. Dividing their forces increases the odds of the message getting through. Raul is cool with the arrangement as long as the payment stays on track. Handing over a letter for her brother, Mira coordinates the handoff strategy. By mixing in with other traveling groups, they hope to avoid drawing any unwanted attention. An apology follows for such a dangerous plan, but Tuer is only thinking about the princess. This separation leaves Mira more exposed than ever before. A heavy goodbye hug marks the moment Mira and Tuer finally split up. Tuer promises she has never left the princess's side since childhood and begs her to stay safe, while Mira can only offer a tearful thank you. One final wave to her departing friend. Standing alone with her new escort, Raul breaks the silence to ask why she would even trust a guy like him. Raul admits that ditching the royal gear made things a lot easier for him too. Mira just tells him he can learn as they go, considering her help as just some simple and honest advice. Looking up with a warm smile, Mira tells him that deep down he is actually a kind person. It is a level of sincerity he was not expecting, leaving him thinking she really is something else. Raul is still dealing with those recurring nightmares. It is the same memory of a dying kingdom and a duty he was forced to carry. Deep in the woods, Raul spots a hut marking the edge of the wild. They are taking a game trail now, and Maria is already struggling to catch her breath. She is totally drained. Even a tiny patch of level dirt feels like a massive win to her right now. The slopes are wrecking her legs and her lungs. Mountain air hits a lot harder when you are not used to the grind. Raul decides to switch up the plan. He suggests taking the longer low route and doubling the brakes to make sure Maria actually makes it. She insists she is okay, but she is definitely feeling the absence of her loyal friend. She tries to lock in and keep moving. Our girl is trying to stay positive, but Raul knows her limit. He reaches out to stop her before she literally works herself to death. Maria tries to pitch in with the campfire cooking, but Raul is not having it. He jokes that if the meal gets ruined, her reaction might actually be the end of him. Dinner comes with a side of survival advice for the road ahead. Raul warns her that the downhill path is a total trap because losing your footing happens way faster than you would think. The conversation turns serious as they discuss the lack of purification this far from the capital. Without a saint around, the land becomes a massive nest for monsters that normal soldiers cannot even touch. Maria finally taps out for the night and catches some sleep while Raul keeps watch. The woods are dead silent, and the only thing moving is the smoke from the fire. Sleep is a struggle when the past keeps haunting you. Raul stares at his blade, thinking about the promises he made to his mother and the reality of what saints actually do to the world. He can't shake her comment about him being a kind person. It is a bitter thought since a true saint was the one who deleted his entire home kingdom from the map. Elsewhere, the chaos is already starting to boil over. A desperate adventurer crashes through the guild doors, screaming for anyone he can hire to help him right now. Keeping things calm at the counter is a struggle while Tyr stresses over the endless paperwork. Raul watches as a guy screams about rumors and the staff finally tries to get back to business. 3 rough-looking adventurers slide in with an offer to help that feels way too eager. These guys are playing the friendly pro angle, but the vibe is definitely sketchy. Raul stays back and stays skeptical while the trio promises Maria a fast trip under their protection. Relieved to finally have a plan, she is ready to sign up and get moving. With the sketchy trio waiting nearby, the receptionist pulls Raul aside for a private chat. A special request has come in that she claims only he can handle. Raul takes a look at the paperwork for the new job. It is a request for an escort to the Itis border for some would-be emigrants. The fake names Maria and Olivia stand out immediately to a pro like him. He knows these two do not belong in this town and questions why the guild is pushing this job on him. The real clincher for this job is the cash the girls dropped as a massive gold advance. Being short-handed is one thing, but that kind of money makes these two a top priority for the guild. Kazami notes the girls' weirdly calm vibe, suspecting they might be highborn or just sheltered. Raul is not about to let them get scammed by the local thugs. Digging for more info is his first priority before committing. The timing of their arrival makes him wonder if they are actually part of the false saint group. Concerns about the girls getting impatient and hiring some random guy start to weigh on Kazami. She even considers if the gold they used for the advance was stolen from the royal castle. Raul keeps it real. People in their situation do not have the luxury of hiring some smooth talker when their lives are on the line. A knowing smile from Kazami proves she sees right through his tough act. She knows he cannot bring himself to just leave them hanging. The sketchy trio is already getting rowdy. They want to know exactly what Kazami was whispering to Raul. A crowd is buzzing over the latest news in the town square. Prince Arthur has officially declared Mira a fake saint and sent her into exile. The town is buzzing with the latest royal decree. Everyone is already standing the new Saint Muriel while dragging Mira through the mud for stealing the spotlight. They have zero sympathy for the girl who spent a year protecting them. Raul listens as the locals pile on the hate. To them, Mira is just a fraud with fake hair who is to blame for all their problems. Our boy looks skeptical, like he knows there is more to the story than just some random rumors. Skepticism is starting to bubble up in the crowd. How does a fake successfully purify miasma across the entire realm for years? Even if the king himself called her out, the idea of a fraud being that powerful does not add up for everyone. The vibe in the streets is a mix of desperate hype and pure fear. While some people toast to their new savior, others are already planning their escape before the kingdom falls apart. It is a mess of panic and wild theories. Raul keeps moving as the insults follow him. The crowd is convinced Mira was just a high-level mimic who scammed her way into the castle. Now they are just waiting to see where she will turn up next. The reality of a country in decline is getting ugly. Screams for help are becoming regular background noise as thugs start preying on the weak in every dark corner. This place is losing its grip on order fast. Raul does not hesitate for a second. He draws his massive blade and clears out the trash in one swift move. The lady he just saved is so desperate she is already begging him to be her escort for any price. Raul is not here for the damsel in distress energy. He tells the woman to stop clinging to strangers and wait until she can actually think straight. His eyes go cold as he thinks about the state of the world. Society relies on saints to keep the monsters at bay, and most people just blindly trust they will always be there. Power does not always end up in the right hands. Raul is convinced that saints are not people you can ever really trust. Back at the guild, Kazami calls out that his client is ready. Raul turns to see Mira waiting for him in her humble traveling cloak. He looks at her and sees the truth behind the simple clothes. He knows she is really Mira, the third princess of Itis and a saint. They arrive in a new town to handle some quick logistics. While Raul focuses on finding a room and food, Mira is distracted by thoughts of her friend crossing the mountains alone. Local chatter is already filling the streets. People are guessing how she escaped, and if she managed to find a carriage to take her far away. Raul tells her to stay put for a minute. She is a little confused but watches him go. While our girl worries about how much Raul has been overworking himself, a group of cloaked men starts moving into position. They are already planning to surround the entire town. The vibe in the streets gets tense as the men start stopping every woman in sight. They are aggressively searching for someone, and they do not care who they harass to find her. One man points right in a girl's face and demands to know if she is Mira. They quickly realize her hair color is wrong and toss her aside to find the next target. Raul comes back in a hurry and grabs her. He is not sticking around for any of this and wants to disappear into the mountains before the sun goes down. As they move, Raul explains that he saw a specific crest on the men's backs. These are not just common thugs, but private soldiers working for Count Diero. Safe in the woods, Raul explains that the squad was hunting for the false saint. Mira realizes things just got a lot more dangerous since the Count is the one who took in her replacement. Mira is low-key panicking because the math just is not mathing. She cannot figure out how the Count's men got here when the road from the capital is blocked by a landslide. Raul has been paying attention to the small details. He saw some specialized mountain-bred horses and realized the hunters used the lower route they had skipped earlier. They take a moment to look back at the valley. It is a good thing they kept moving, or they would have been cornered in no time. Pushing further into the woods means no campfires tonight. Mira is bummed about another night in the dirt, but Raul says staying hidden is the priority. Finally, Mira speaks her mind. She asks why he would bother helping a false saint escape from the law. Raul stops and gives her a look that says it all. He simply tells her that he knew the truth the entire time. The mask is officially off. Raul reveals he knows she is the real Saint Mira, and he is not buying any of the lies about her being a fake. Raul gets introspective, admitting that while he doesn't hate all saints, his life has been a solo mission for way too long. A flashback shows a younger version of him running for his life in a world fueled by pure chaos and looting. Scavenging just to stay alive, the kid was desperate for anyone to come and save him from the nightmare. The memory of letting go of his brother's hand during the disaster still haunts him to this day. With his family and home nothing but a memory, he finds it impossible to place his faith in anything, especially a saint. He watches Mira sleep and realizes that despite being exiled as a fake, she never lost sight of who she wanted to be. Her unshakable spirit is the real deal, giving her the strength to trust others even after everything she has been through. Long before the fall of Ridai, things were very different. The former king of Itis was a hero, leading his army to save Ridai from monster attacks time and time again. Raul was just a shy kid back then, hiding behind his brother, because the king's presence was just too overwhelming. He spent his childhood looking up to the man who saved his home. But the real highlight was the little girl the king was protecting. Even back then, she was being held like the most precious person in the world. Back in the present, Raul finally drops the act and apologizes for playing dumb. He admits he knew her identity the whole time and just pretended he didn't. Mira is a complete mess, crying about how she tried to keep her secret even after saying she trusted him. She was just terrified of the consequences and didn't know how to handle the situation. She feels like a total clown for trying to fool him with a straight face while he was just playing along. Raul doesn't hold back, calling the whole performance pathetic. Raul is officially done with the secrets. "Yeah, I guess you did," he says, finally letting her off the hook. Mira decides it is time for a formal introduction. She drops the act and claims her title as the third princess of Itis. This job just became a whole lot more personal for Raul. If he can get her home safely, he can finally settle the score with his own past. "It is nice to meet you again," he says. Repaying a debt from his childhood is the only mission that matters now. If he pulls this off, he might finally be able to look at himself in the mirror without any regrets. The king of Rhodaris is out here dropping a major history lesson. He explains that it has been 80 years since their kingdom actually had a saint of its own. The last saint married into the royal family only to be cruelly mistreated. Her power was so weak that she could barely even produce basic talismans. Because she was an orphanage girl instead of high nobility, she was constantly discriminated against. Even the king's own ancestor refused to acknowledge her, and the family line ended without any children. Now the whole world calls Rhodaris a cursed land abandoned by the gods. They see the lack of new saints as divine punishment for the way the kingdom abused the last one. But the king has a plan to change their luck. He announces that a traveling saint is on her way, and he wants Prince Arthur to marry her to secure their future. Arthur flashes a perfect public relations smile for the crowd. He promises to wash away the sins of the past for the sake of the kingdom. Once the doors are closed, Arthur drops the act and calls the whole thing ridiculous. He thinks it is pathetic for a king to beg a human for help and considers the people's spendlessness to be the real curse. Arthur continues his rant about bloodlines and rank while looking over the city. He believes everyone should stay in their lane because worshipping individuals is exactly how a nation falls apart. He thinks everything is fine as long as people are properly controlled. Our boy puts on his best charming smile and offers a hand to Marielle, who is clearly feeling the pressure. Behind the scenes, he is disgusted that some wandering girl with no home gets treated like royalty just for being a saint. He hates that his father is forcing him to play house with her, calling the entire situation a joke. In a dark room, two men discuss the breaking news of a discovered saint. They confirm that a girl named Marielle was taken from an orphanage and brought into a count's household. The plan is to have the high priest perform secret examinations while keeping the news from leaking. The boss demands silence and wants to hear every single detail about the girl's noble roots. Arthur looks like he is finally seeing a way out of his predicament. He considers this whole messy situation to be a gift from the heavens. He stands before the window with his arms wide, feeling like he is finally free from his father's foolish plans. Now that he has a noble saint to work with, he is ready to take control. Arthur is deep in thought, planning to rewrite the entire narrative with his own hands. He knows he has to be careful, because there are still a few wild cards left on the board. He clutches his hand as he waits for the public to fully buy into the new saint's power. He is ready to give the people a taste of hope before making his next move. Looking out from the balcony, he orders his men to spread rumors and make the drama as intense as possible. He wants the fallout to be a total blaze that leaves no room for mercy. This dude flips the script, playing the role of a concerned leader in front of the guards. He acts like destroying Mira's reputation is just a form of tough love meant to make her reflect on her sins. He knows that isolating her is the key since her only ally is a single maid. If she loses her cool under the pressure, it just makes her eventual exile look like a natural choice to the kingdom. The church and the chancellor are already under his thumb, so he is not worried about any pushback. With his father stuck in a sickbed, he sees his path to the throne as a guaranteed victory. The high priest delivers the official news that the kingdom finally has a homegrown saint. It has been 80 years since the last one, and the public is already starting to celebrate. Arthur tells the high priest to lie and claim Mira was a criminal who deceived the kingdom for her own gain. The old man is terrified and refuses to play along, but Arthur just smirks at his defiance. Then, without missing a beat, he suddenly calls for the guards, pretending the high priest has completely lost his mind. He demands the old man be removed at once before he causes an even bigger scene. The guards close in with their spears while Arthur reminds everyone that as the acting king, his word is absolute authority. The priest tries to protest that he was appointed by the king himself, but it is way too late for logic. Arthur has already got a replacement lined up from a noble house to take over the role of High Priest immediately. He tells them not to worry about the transition since his new guy is ready to keep the title clean. He orders the guards to throw the old man into a hole where no one will ever hear him scream again. Arthur watches with a cold grin as the former High Priest is dragged away in total despair. Our antagonist is already dreaming about the perfect story he is going to sell the public to gain their total loyalty. He wants the citizens to see him and Muriel as tragic symbols of hope while they rage at the false saint. With everything falling into place, Arthur declares that the kingdom and its people now belong to him alone. He is ready to purge every last impurity to make sure his control over the realm is absolute. 3 days after Mira gets the boot, Arthur storms into the temple with a face like thunder while the staff tries and fails to slow him down. He finds Muriel lounging like royalty while attendants fuss over her wardrobe. She just gives him a cheerful wave, completely unbothered by the chaos. Arthur loses it immediately, demanding to know why she has not done a single thing in 3 days. Instead of an answer, she invites him to her current tea party and mentions a nap session is next on the schedule. Our boy is not amused and shuts her down instantly. He reminds her that she is supposed to be the face of the kingdom, yet she has spent her time locked away playing dress-up and gorging on snacks. Arthur starts pointing fingers at the massive entourage she has hired, from personal chefs to a literal court jester. He tells her to stop remodeling the place and start acting like a saint. She tries to play the innocent card, claiming that bonding with the priests over snacks and tea is basically part of the job description. She has managed to learn all their secrets, from their favorite flowers to where they stash the good food. Arthur is forced to watch the absolute chaos of the temple staff revealing their weirdest personal habits. One priest is getting his butt smacked while another admits he basically operates on Chen rubs like a house pet. Our prince is reaching his limit and demands she starts acting like a proper saint. He reminds her that their job is to stand together and make the public forget their fears, not turn the temple into a literal circus. She brushes it off with a cheerful grin and claims she and the staff already worked out a perfect greeting. Muriel is clearly not taking any of his lectures seriously. She hits the balcony like a pop star, calling herself the newbie saint while the crowd goes wild for their new big sister. Arthur is losing it in the background, telling the crowd he will slap anyone who keeps squealing. Walking through the palace halls, Arthur realizes his grand plan is already falling apart on day 3. He complains that the whole vibe is way too cutesy and the public hype he built up is going to die out. He even starts missing Mira, admitting that the girl he exiled actually had more dignity than this new one. They try to figure out if her total lack of refinement is from her orphanage days or being spoiled at the Diaro estate. He turns his anger on the high priest, telling him to stop letting her run wild. Arthur reminds him that his only job was to keep the temple in line and demands to know what he is actually doing. Arthur is losing his mind as the high priest explains how Muriel completely took over the temple in a single day. She managed to learn everyone's weirdest habits and secrets, leaving the priest struggling just to keep the staff working. Our prince is left wondering how she even learned to handle their specific interests. He decides to launch an investigation into Muriel's orphanage to see what they are actually teaching people there. The chancellor takes the order and prepares to head out immediately. Arthur is clearly done with the surprises and wants answers. Plans are already in motion to have tutors watch Muriel every second of the day, even while she is asleep. The high priest tries to cut in with some actual bad news, mentioning an urgent problem that cannot be ignored. Arthur stops and looks back, waiting for the other shoe to drop. A dark swarm of monsters has started surrounding the capital walls, just sitting there and waiting. They are not attacking yet, but their presence is so heavy that merchants are too terrified to enter or leave the city. It is like they are waiting for everyone inside to finally break down. Arthur claims he already knew about the monster problem and ordered the patrols to double up. He tries to brush it off as a normal increase, but his mind is clearly stuck on the status of the city barrier. The high priest drops the truth, explaining that the city was only safe because of Mira's massive power. Even after her exile, her lingering energy is the only thing keeping the monsters from flooding the streets. Since the priests lack her strength, they can only guess how much longer that protection will last. Arthur asks how long the traces will last and learns they only have about 10 days before the protection is gone. This leaves him exactly 1 week to force Muriel to prove she can actually replace Mira. He is not happy about the tight deadline and calls the whole situation a complete mess. Arthur narrows his eyes with a cold resolve. He is done playing games and decides he needs to light a fire under his new saint to get results. He drags Muriel into the prayer hall and shuts down her complaining about the creepy paintings and ugly flowers. This is her new office, and he orders her to sit down and get to work whether she likes it or not. The prince demands she deploy a barrier immediately while clearing out all the other priests to keep her from getting distracted. He calls this his maximum compromise, insisting she start by covering the entire temple. To make the lockdown easier, he brings her favorite cushion, slippers, and even that stuffed toy from her orphanage. He is trying to create the perfect workspace, even if he accidentally grabs some of his own stuff in the process. Mariel tries to plead for a tea party she promised, but Arthur is not having any of it. He yells at her to cancel everything and just do what he says. The high priest points out that some people literally cannot sleep unless she whispers to them up close, but Arthur cuts him off. He is taking over all management duties so she can focus on magic. Everyone holds their breath as Mariel steps up to show off her skills, but the vibe immediately dies. After all that hype, she just stares blankly and asks how she is even supposed to make a barrier from where she is standing. Back at the capital, the locals are already gossiping about the new saint who has been out of sight since her arrival. They are wondering why they haven't seen her face or received a proper greeting yet. Some residents try to give her a pass, figuring she is just exhausted after dealing with the mess the fake saint supposedly left behind. Inside the temple, Arthur is losing his mind trying to coach Mariel through some basic magic. She manages a tiny puff of energy, and even though it is basically nothing, she seems thrilled about it. Mariel tries to put some effort into expanding her power, but the little star between her hands just poofs out of existence. She immediately taps out, complaining that it is impossible to make it any bigger. Arthur reminds her that the last saint covered the entire city with a single gesture, but Mariel is not hearing it. She yells back that Mira's feats were not even humanly possible and refuses to keep trying. Realizing that expecting Mira-level miracles was a stretch, our guy pulls out a backup plan. He holds up a set of talismans, deciding to pivot to something a little more beginner-friendly. The plan is to create portable blessings the people can actually see and hold to feel the saint's grace. It is a step down from a city-wide barrier, but Arthur thinks even she can handle this much. Mariel looks down at her pendant, admitting that drawing out her power is just too much. She tells Arthur straight up that she is probably not suited for the job. Arthur just stares at her back while she finally admits she just cannot do it. Arthur is losing his patience, demanding to know what she can actually do if her only trick is glowing. Mariel just stands there looking shook while he lets out a heavy sigh. He starts questioning if she even deserves the title of saint at this rate. Mariel panics and insists she is a real saint because the high priests double-checked her. She stammers that she just cannot use her powers right, making things even worse. Arthur leans in with a cold question, asking if she just lied to everyone in the temple. Arthur points a finger at her, calling her out for fooling everyone while she just chilled. He threatens to expose her as a fraud and promises she will spend the rest of her life in a dark cell. The detailed description of her rotting in prison has her looking absolutely terrified. Mariel starts wailing that it is all a misunderstanding because she really does not want to end up behind bars. She desperately reminds him that everyone called her healing power amazing back then. Arthur stops and considers the mention of healing while her crying gets even louder. Arthur tells her that as a local, she should know all the old stories about the saints. He brings up the previous saint, claiming she was a miserable failure who let the whole kingdom down. A smirk crosses his face as he offers to explain exactly why that happened. He holds out a cloth for her to dry her eyes, telling her to just relax for a second. Arthur walks back his threat, saying all that prison talk only applies if she actually is a fake. Arthur claims Mira failed because she didn't put in enough effort, painting her as a quitter to motivate the new girl. The priest adds to the lecture, telling Mariel that humans are built to grow from their past mistakes. He urges her to start polishing her potential through hard work. Arthur promises that success will bring her the love of the entire country. Mariel is all in, already imagining a life of snacks and songs far away from her old orphanage. He orders her to follow his lead and have a castle-wide barrier ready in 7 days. Mariel is just vibing, more interested in her new morning greetings than the actual job. The mood shifts instantly as Arthur drops a cold threat. He warns her that if she fails, she won't have a future left to look forward to. Time to get to work, so Arthur brings up etiquette lessons next. Mariel looks absolutely stressed, probably realizing this saint lifestyle isn't all snacks and games. Later, Arthur is trying to figure out how to explain his troop movements to the public. He gets interrupted by a messenger announcing that Count Diarro has arrived for an audience. Arthur thinks this audience might actually be useful and orders his guards to let the visitor in. Making his entrance, Count Diarro does not exactly leave a great impression on the prince. Arthur suspects he only found Mariel to chase the fame of saintly blood once it became convenient. A low bow follows as the noble pays his respects, but Arthur sees right through the act. He assumes the man is just trying to dodge trouble by showing up early. Zero patience for small talk, the prince tells him to keep it short and skip the pleasantries. Make it brief, he says, clearly wanting the meeting over with. Playing up the drama, Diarro dabs his eyes while bringing up his brother's grave. He asks if Mariel is truly fit to protect the country, doing his best to look like a worried relative. With a heavy sigh, Arthur finally admits that things are not going well with their new saint. He shares the excuse that her powers are being suppressed by some mysterious force. The Count rejects any other answer and immediately points the finger at their favorite target. Calling Mira a wretch, he claims she placed a curse and praises Arthur for his honesty. Diarro is doing the most, begging for permission to take his private army out of bounds. He promises to track down Mira and force a confession out of her. Arthur plays it cool and gives the green light, but he has conditions. He demands they keep it low-key and avoid any unnecessary cruelty since he still needs her in one piece. A few days later, Arthur checks in with his attendant East to see how things are going. Marielle is finally acting like a saint now, and the prince is convinced his threat did the trick. Turns out the new girl is just a temporary fix to keep the public happy. Arthur reveals his true target is still Mira, and he is just waiting for the right moment to squeeze the power out of her. The plan involves 3 simple steps to ruin Mira forever. They intend to erase her public image and blame her for every disaster before breaking her spirit. Dairo is already busy spreading rumors that the monster surge and the missing saint are all part of Mira's curse. Public hatred is peaking, leaving the girl with 0 places to hide. The prince is loving every second of this as he watches his plan unfold from the shadows. He is using Diaro and Marielle as cover so that once Mira is broken and hated by everyone, she will be much easier to control. Arthur is laughing like a classic villain because his plan is finally coming together. He wants Marielle to be the shiny mascot while Mira handles the dirty work in the shadows. He is basically treating the entire country like a stage play where he is the only one who knows the script. Flashback to the castle where Arthur is talking to the woman who used to train Mira. She is feeling a bit overwhelmed by the request, but the prince tells her to relax. He does not need his new girl to be perfect, he just needs her to look the part when the crowd is watching. Arthur starts piecing together the mystery of the princess while the duo rests by a quiet river. It is strange for someone so powerful to hide who they are, but as long as the barriers are up, he is willing to let it slide. Back at the fire, Raul mentions how lucky they are that nobody in town recognized her. He says foreign royals are usually total mysteries to the public, though he knew the truth the second he saw her face. Mira looks down as she realizes her isolated childhood was actually a blessing in disguise. Since she almost never appeared in public, they were able to slip past the guards and leave the city without anyone chasing them. When Raul asks if the prince was also in on the secret, Mira is pretty sure he was clueless. She explains that keeping her identity hidden was a personal request from the king, and she doubts Arthur would have gone against his father's wishes. A quick memory shows that Mira was always a natural when it came to royal grace and manners. It leaves a big question hanging in the air about why the king would keep his own son in the dark about his fiancée. The tutor recalls how Mira was first introduced as just a simple wandering saint, but something didn't add up. Every time she asked about a noble background, Mira would just give a mysterious smile and stay silent. Arthur starts putting the pieces together, realizing the girl always carried herself with a royal vibe he completely overlooked. His deep thoughts are cut short when the chancellor comes running, shouting for him to move it. The citizens think Darrow finally caught Mira, but the truth is way more intense. King Leroyd from the kingdom of Itis has officially arrived, and he is not here for a social visit. Arthur is absolutely fuming because the king of Itis just pulled up to the castle unannounced. He snaps at the chancellor, demanding to know why he was not reported to immediately. The chancellor keeps his cool and explains that there is a secret pact between the 2 kingdoms. Apparently, the king of Itis has a permanent hall pass to enter their territory whenever he wants, no questions asked. Mariel crashes the serious mood with her usual high energy, throwing up a peace sign and a cheery greeting. Arthur is officially done with everyone today, especially since she is following him around like a lost puppy. She is actually hyped for the meeting because she heard Itis is a brutal country that somehow has 4 saints. She is hoping their king has some secret cheat codes that can finally jumpstart her magic. Arthur tells her to get a grip because her carefree attitude is a total headache. He is busy wasting time reallocating troops because she is failing to live up to his expectations. Despite her being a total airhead, Arthur figures her high spirits are not the worst thing to have around. Promoting her as a public mascot for the future is still a solid move, assuming they even have a future left. He grants her special permission to sit in on the meeting, but only if she keeps her mouth shut and does not embarrass him. She agrees immediately with a big smile and her classic carefree attitude. The chancellor tries to introduce Arthur, but Marielle is busy asking for a vocabulary lesson. He snaps and calls her an idiot for being so clueless. Arthur rubs his head in pure frustration. The plan is in its final stage, but everything just keeps going off script. A nagging feeling starts to bother him as they move through the castle. Something about the situation feels wrong. That bad feeling only gets worse when they step into the room. The king of Itis turns around with a smooth greeting while the chancellor looks nervous. The visitor introduces himself as Leroyd, the king of Itis. He claims it is an honor to finally meet in person. This young king took over after his father died in battle and is known for fighting on the front lines. His bravery and silver hair earned him the name of the Lion. Arthur plays the polite host and explains that he is filling in for his bedridden father. Internally, he doubts this slender guy can even lift a sword. King Leroyd keeps it casual, telling Marielle there is no need for formalities since they are basically neighbors now. Our newbie saint is completely flustered, barely managing to stutter out a greeting. Arthur is already playing detective while Marielle is just shocked the king even knows her name. Leroy clears the air, explaining that his heavy armor is just a standard security measure and nothing to worry about. The king of Idas lays his cards on the table, explaining that his main army is waiting outside and he only brought a few guards with him. Arthur plays the polite host, telling him that nobody can blame a ruler for taking precautions. Arthur offers a smooth apology for the lack of a proper welcome, but his brain is working overtime. He is realizing that something is definitely wrong if his border patrols never reported a whole army marching through. Leroy casually drops that they had to fight off some monsters on the way and asks for retroactive permission to use force. Arthur is reeling, realizing this king just strolled through the same monsters that have the capital paralyzed. Playing it cool, Arthur thanks the king for the assist while questioning how much authority this secret agreement actually has. Leroy just gives a knowing smile, clearly impressed by how fast the prince is putting the pieces together. The king of Idas stops the small talk and gets straight to business, revealing he is here for two specific reasons. Arthur is absolutely stunned on the inside, unable to believe a deal this massive was kept a secret from him. Arthur plays it cool, asking if the king just wants troops and border access while checking on his father's health. Leroy mentions their long friendship and his concern for the bedridden king, but his words have Arthur looking genuinely confused. Arthur tries to brag about their medical technology, but Leroy shuts down the fluff and demands he get back to the point. Arthur claims he and the saint have everything handled, but Leroy brings up a grave decision from a year ago that cost them all their foreign aid. Arthur points out that security and the economy actually improved during the year, while Muriel just looks lost in the background. Leroy acknowledges the growth but attributes it all to the saint's blessing, even their safe travel through monster territory. This is exactly the opening Arthur needed, and he quickly credits those successes to the power of Muriel standing right there. Leroy drops some heavy lore, explaining that the previous king felt like a villain for just using the saint for his own goals. The old man actually believed he was the one who deserved the curse. Arthur is losing it internally, calling his father a spineless fool for spilling such embarrassing secrets in front of a rival king. He is baffled as to why his father never consulted him about this agreement or his hesitations. Suddenly, a much more terrifying question hits him. If he was kept in the dark, why was Leroy told, and why is he here now? The realization starts to dawn on him that this secret pact was made long ago, trading unconditional access for the saint who appeared. His heart nearly stops as he connects the final dots. Idas has 4 royal saints and they all share that same silver hair. Arthur's brain is basically short-circuiting. He tries to tell himself she was just a wandering saint, but the sweat on his face tells a different story. Leroy is not falling for it. He hits the prince with a smug smile and commends his talent for cooking up schemes. Muriel jumps in with the worst timing possible. She starts yapping about how amazing Arthur is and how he always puts the kingdom first. She continues her praise, claiming the whole country is happy and loves their prince. Arthur looks like he is about to pass out from the stress. Our girl tells Arthur to just follow her lead and repeat what she says. She is fully convinced the fake saint is the real problem here. Leroy leans in with a dangerous amount of interest. He asks what kind of person the supposed fake saint actually was. Muriel starts counting off insults, even mocking the girl for her silver hair. Arthur is desperately trying to shut her up before she digs his grave any deeper. Muriel is on a roll, blaming every single one of her own failures on Mira. She is basically calling the girl a professional scammer who only exists to cause trouble and curse the kingdom. Arthur is vibrating with fear as Leroy just sits there and listens with a terrifyingly calm expression. He is screaming at her to shut up in his head because his life is flashing before his eyes. Our girl just keeps digging the hole deeper, labeling Mira as nothing more than a despicable criminal. Arthur looks like he is about to have a heart attack right on the spot. Leroy finally speaks up with a chill tone that is definitely not matching the intensity in the room. He asks what the problem is while looking for an answer from the prince. Muriel is shook as the guards move in. Arthur starts choking on his own words under the pressure of Leroy's presence. The king just sits there calmly and asks what this fake saint actually looked like. Leroy asks if she had silver hair, or if she really looked like the kind of vile woman who spends her time plotting against people. He is wearing a smirk that says he already knows exactly who she is. Arthur is barely holding it together, stuttering through his words while sweating buckets. He was just hit with a wave of killing intent so strong he thought he was about to meet his maker. Leroy drops the acting king title like a lead weight. He reminds Arthur that he was the one who signed the exile papers and refuses to let him dodge the question. The truth finally comes out. Mira was sent here a year ago as a secret saint, only to be betrayed the moment her engagement was official. Leroy makes it clear he is here for his sister. Arthur is officially short-circuiting. He is desperately trying to find an exit strategy while Muriel just stands there clueless as the room turns lethal. Desperation mode is in full swing. Arthur is sweating buckets and looking for anyone he can throw under the bus to save his own skin before settling on Count Diaro. Leroy is not impressed by the silence. He reminds the prince that the count is still out there destroying Mira's reputation across the kingdom while Arthur just trembles. Arthur finally snaps and screams that it was all the Count's fault. He claims they were all manipulated into doing things they can never take back, while Marielle watches in shock. Leroy just sits there rhythmically tapping his finger while repeating Arthur's excuses. He mocks the idea that betraying Mira was for her own good with a look that says the prince is finished. Leroy is done with the games and calls Arthur out for following orders like a good little puppet. Arthur has no comeback for being called out as a mindless tool. The roast continues as Leroy mentions that while the old king made some bad calls, at least he was ready to take the fall for them. Arthur is basically short-circuiting under the pressure of a real ruler. Leroy starts turning to leave, acting like he has better things to do than point out every single one of their failures. He decides to drop one last truth bomb out of respect for Arthur's father. He looks Arthur dead in the eye and tells him he is simply not built for this level of responsibility. The words hit like a physical truck, leaving the prince shattered while Muriel just watches the destruction from the sidelines. Leroy explains that a fake saint won't have the juice to clear the miasma for a long time. He adds that a saint showing up out of nowhere after generations of nothing is a major red flag they all chose to ignore. The king of Itis heads for the exit without looking back, leaving the Roydara's officials stunned that he is already bouncing. He tells them a formal decision is coming later and tells them to take good care of Muriel. Arthur is officially broken, desperately trying to offer a party to save face. Leroy doesn't even slow down, making it clear he is finished with this circus while Muriel stands there in silence. The situation in Roydaris is spiraling into a nightmare as Mira's barrier begins to fail. Once the shield drops, a wave of monsters will crash into the capital like a broken dam. Royal soldiers are going to be fodder for the incoming horde. As the bodies pile up, the citizens will start asking why their new saint isn't doing a single thing to save them. People will be begging for Muriel to step up, but she's not even going to show her face. No amount of prayer can change the fact that she has zero power to actually fix this mess. Everything these people worked for is going to vanish in a single night. With their homes in ruins, any leftover faith in the royal family is going to die out fast. Edis can't just let their neighbor turn into a monster nest. They'll definitely step in to help, but everyone knows a king's salvation never comes for free. King Leroy is playing the long game, waiting for the country to break before he makes his move. He'll show up with Mira by his side, acting like a savior while pointing the finger at the royals who caused all this suffering. Arthur realizes that the people's despair is about to turn into pure rage. And thanks to Leroy's perfectly timed truth bomb, all that hatred is going to be aimed straight at him. Arthur is falling apart as he realizes he messed up big time. If he had known who Mira really was, he never would have treated her like garbage. It is like a lion has its fangs on his neck and all he can do is shake. Confessing makes the people riot, but lying just makes Leroy even more dangerous. Only a few hours ago he was laughing about his plan, but now his own castle feels like a prison. Our boy is officially trapped like a rat. He scrambled back to his room, but he still cannot stop thinking about that terrifying interrogation. With the monster attacks coming, he is running out of time and options. His mind is racing through ideas like taking out Leroy or asking other nations for backup. Both are impossible, and help would never arrive before Itis or the monsters finish them off. Suddenly, he realizes he can still play his hand. If he finds Mira before Leroy does and forces her to fix the barrier, he might be able to talk his way out of this. Desperation is a powerful force and Arthur is finally getting his head back in the game. He refuses to lose everything he built and is ready to force everyone else to find a solution. The new high priest drops a truth bomb, telling Arthur his only play is to chase Leroy and beg for mercy. If he actually cares about the kingdom, he needs to drop the ego and focus on saving the people. Our boy is officially short-circuiting. Marielle is just vibing in the background, completely oblivious to the disaster she helped start. The priest is done playing nice and reminds Arthur that they are both going down together. Exiling the real saint for a fake mascot was a speedrun to destroying the kingdom. It is all jokes for the priest now. He tells Arthur that none of his little plans ever mattered because the game was rigged from day one. Reality hits like a truck. Without a real saint, the temple's 80 years of authority has officially gone up in smoke. The priest finally lets the mask slip. He only joined this mess for a good time after getting snubbed for his brother's title, and he thinks this country's collapse is actually pretty fitting. The insults keep flying as the priest mocks Arthur for being too lazy to even check the facts. Arthur tries to argue that even an incompetent saint should have been enough, but he is just looking for anyone else to blame. Arthur is losing it, screaming that his plan was solid and blaming the priest for the lack of investigation. The priest just laughs in his face, calling him the real idiot for sinking the country with a half-baked conspiracy. They are in a full screaming match now, each one trying to shift the blame for the kingdom's impending doom. Arthur claims the priest was just hiding behind him, but the priest hits back with a reminder that our boy was never as smart as he thought. The vibe shifts instantly when Marielle walks in, proudly holding up a single charm she spent all day making. She is oblivious to the chaos and thinks this one little trinket proves she is doing her job. Arthur is having a meltdown seeing this useless charm while the priest continues to roast him. Marielle is still beaming with pride, convinced she followed his orders to a T despite doing nothing useful. The prince finally snaps, screaming that she is a useless girl, who is only worth something because of her birthright. Marielle is left stunned, her cute mascot act finally hitting a wall of genuine royal fury. Suddenly, the chancellor drops a truth bomb that changes everything. He reveals that Marielle was not even born into a noble family, calling her background into question. The investigation is officially in, proving she was taken from an orphanage right after birth. It looks like Count Diaro faked her entire bloodline just to get a seat at the table, and the whole scam is finally coming apart. The replacement high priest just laughs and says her lack of noble blood explains why she is so uneducated. Marielle is losing it, desperately screaming that none of this is true. She starts spilling all the tea, claiming the count promised to take care of her as his own niece. Apparently, everyone told her to just forget the orphanage because Arthur would prefer a fake noble over a commoner. She clings to Arthur and begs him not to take away her status. She was promised a life of luxury as long as she played her part, and she is not ready for the dream to end. Arthur is at his breaking point and keeps telling everyone to shut up. The priest just keeps poking the bear, mocking how lowborn girls always make a scene when their world falls apart. Someone finally says the quiet part out loud and tells Arthur he was just terrified of Mira. Her power was something he could never control or understand, and that fear drove every one of his pathetic schemes. The priest keeps the insults coming, pointing out that Arthur only used these schemes because he was too weak to handle Mira. Meanwhile, Marielle is still delusional, asking if she can stay just because she followed orders. Arthur finally snaps and unloads on her, calling her a useless commoner who failed at every single task. He tells her to stay out of it, leaving her stunned and speechless as her mascot privilege officially expires. Marielle is done playing the cute saint and starts roasting Arthur's incompetence to his face. She demands to know what he can actually do besides yell at monsters, leaving the prince completely rattled. The room goes dark as the harsh reality of his failure sets in. The voices around him are loud and clear, telling him he simply does not have the caliber to lead this kingdom. Even his own soldiers can't help but laugh at the pathetic sight of their prince falling apart. Arthur starts spiraling into a paranoid delusion, screaming for guards and claiming treason against anyone who witnesses his humiliation. He flees the room and collapses against the doors, sweating and trembling from the sheer weight of his bruised ego. In his twisted mind, he is the victim here, convinced that everyone else is just a self-absorbed fool, while he remains perfectly in the right. Meanwhile, the real world does not care about his feelings as the monster swarm outside continues to grow. The castle guards are being overwhelmed, and it is clear that the situation is rapidly spiraling out of control. Arthur tries to hide behind his authority, barking orders at the chancellor to protect him at all costs. But even the staff is starting to check out, admitting they only followed him because they were told to, and they have no idea how to fix this mess. Walking through the empty halls, Arthur is haunted by the whispers of the people he supposedly rules. They are already comparing him to his younger brother and insulting his mother, and the paranoia finally breaks him as he starts shouting at shadows. Outside the palace, the vibe is pure chaos as citizens scream for the prince to save them. They are starting to realize that hiding behind castle walls won't stop the monsters, and they want answers. Arthur is having a total meltdown on his couch, hearing the echoes of his people's desperation. Everyone is finally realizing that Mira was their only real hope, leaving the prince with zero options. A heavy silence suddenly falls over the room as a massive presence makes itself known. Arthur looks up with his heart in his throat, staring into giant eyes that seem to be peering right through his soul. The scene shifts to the throne room where Arthur is being announced as the king with way more fanfare than he deserves. He is sitting tall, trying his best to look the part despite the absolute mess he has made of everything. A mysterious woman appears and drops into a deep bow, claiming she single-handedly wiped out the entire monster horde. She calls it a simple act of purification, offering a literal miracle right when the kingdom was about to fall apart. Our boy is sweating bullets as he tries to stutter out his thanks to this stranger. He is internally screaming because this situation is impossible, but he is far too desperate to start asking questions. She looks up with a serene gaze, identifying herself as a saint and begging for mercy. She clearly has no idea that she is bowing to the most incompetent man in the room. Ariano keeps it professional, introducing herself as the wandering saint and offering a polite apology for her late arrival. She continues her humble act, claiming that serving the true king is her only joy and that she has zero interest in fame or status. With a peaceful smile, she promises to do whatever he commands, giving Arthur exactly what he wants to hear. Arthur is absolutely piqued, calling this a miracle from the heavens before begging her to stay and save his kingdom with her power. Our boy is really feeling himself now, screaming that he is fit to be king while a massive shadow looms over him in the background. Elsewhere, someone examines a cluster of diseased fruit. They drop some lore about how certain creatures actually love the taste of the blight and help it spread on purpose. Mira asks if she can just cut out the gross parts, but she is warned to avoid the fruit entirely. Based on that reaction, she definitely learned that lesson the hard way. Raul takes charge of the harvesting while Mira gives him some credit for his sharp memory. She notices the lingering magic of the barrier is finally starting to wear off, leaving her wondering how Marielle is handling the pressure back at the capital. Our boy decides to wrap things up and find an inn before the sun sets for the night. Raul makes sure to tell Mira to stay close, since wandering off alone in the woods after dark is a recipe for disaster. Raul asks about a contract mage while the shopkeeper gets their dried berries ready. The guy says his mage is out but should be back by morning. The shopkeeper laughs and welcomes Mira as a new face in the area. She seems a bit overwhelmed by the sudden attention. The shopkeeper laughs and welcomes Mira as a new face in the area. She seems a bit overwhelmed by the sudden attention. Elsewhere, the streets are filled with people making plans for the next day. The duo finishes up their business and keeps moving. This town is a major hub for travelers looking to stock up on gear. The view of the lake is surprisingly clear despite all the chaos in the kingdom. Raul breaks down the next phase of the journey, planning to head toward the mountains once they are fully rested. He tells Mira to keep her eyes on the map while he talks. He warns her that Count Dairo's men are still out there and could have set traps while they were hiding in the forest. They need to stay sharp until they cross the border. Walking through the quiet streets, Raul warns Mira that they need to play the part of adventurers. Since the town is not crowded, they are way easier to spot. Mira is curious about the mages Raul mentioned. He explains that plenty of them work as freelancers, selling their magical services for odd jobs instead of running a permanent shop. Just then, a quirky woman and a giant witch hat appears to greet them. Raul introduces her as Jiri, a contract mage who is an expert at processing magic and preserving food. Jiri tries to start a conversation about recent events, but Raul is not having it. He tells her to save the talk for the shop tomorrow and keeps moving. Getting right in Mira's face, this girl notes how rare it is for Raul to have a companion. Her sharp teeth and intense vibe are a lot to handle. Raul drags Mira away and tells her to just leave the woman alone. Apparently, Jiri has a habit of accidentally using explosion magic on everyone whenever she gets surprised. Mira is too busy daydreaming about smoked food to really listen though. Jiri is not taking no for an answer and decides to tag along. Raul suggests they start jogging to blend in better, while Mira gets lost in thought about never having to go hungry again. Mira breaks it down for him, explaining that magic is not some infinite cheat code and actually takes a massive toll on the user. Raul takes this in, realizing that even a saint's sacred power has its natural limits. He starts spiraling about the risks, wondering if the enemy soldiers can recognize her face or how long she can hold out in a real fight. While Mira is busy staring at her map, Raul makes a silent vow to protect her all the way to the border, no matter what happens. Suspicious eyes track their every move from beneath the floorboards as they reach the inn. Raul tries to call it a night, but Mira stops him for a quick second. She flashes him a cheerful smile and bids him good night before disappearing behind her door. Raul just stands there in the hallway, looking completely confused by the vibe. Finally getting a moment of peace, she collapses onto the mattress and relishes the luxury of sleeping in a real bed for the first time in 5 days. Staring at the flickering candle, Mira starts spiraling with questions about the weird vibe in the capital. She wonders if the soldiers were actually trying to protect her from Arthur, but she quickly realizes that is just wishful thinking. Sitting on the edge of her bed, she regrets not being honest with Raul earlier now that he is actually treating her with some respect. She knows that being a fake saint is basically a death sentence, so they need to move as fast as possible. Downstairs, Raul interrogates the locals about a fire that was set from the outside. The door is scorched shut and reeks of arson, but our boy decides to handle the investigation himself. He heads back up to check on Mira and calls out her fake name before letting himself in. To his surprise, the door is completely unlocked. Raul nearly has a heart attack thinking the Count's men got to her, but she just groggily asks if it is morning already. He lets out a massive breath of relief once he realizes she was just dead to the world. Raul sinks into a chair and closes his eyes, muttering a quick thank goodness to the heavens. Mira just sits there looking totally confused by his reaction. She explains that she set up custom barriers on both of their doors that only they can pass through. Even if someone breaks the locks, the rooms are basically fortresses unless one of them touches the door first. Raul facepalms as he realizes their own presence acted as the keys the whole time. He finally understands why she was so relaxed about traveling as a simple princess and maid. Mira looks down and apologizes for keeping him in the dark, admitting she just wanted him to get some actual sleep. Our boy is caught off guard and asks if she really set up a fortress for his room too. He gives her a rare, gentle look and tells her it is fine as long as she is safe. The tough guy act is starting to slip. Raul points out that the attack was way too sloppy to be Diaro's men. If professional hitmen wanted a kidnapping, they would not have been this loud or messy. He looks over the damage and confirms that someone was definitely targeting her room specifically. It was not a random robbery, but it also did not follow the usual patterns of a professional hit. Raul suggests they pack up and ditch the town immediately before whoever is hunting them catches up. Mira hesitates, clearly having some extra intel on the situation. She points out the scorch marks on the door and explains that a mage was definitely involved. There is a clear trace of mana left in the keyhole from when they tried to burn their way inside. Rawl is floored that Mira can track mana trails like it is nothing. She explains it is just like pulling on a single thread, and she can follow the trace right back to the source. Our girl is not about to let these arsonists slide. She declares they are catching these guys before leaving town, because someone has to pay for the damage to their door. Rawl gives a sharp smirk and agrees since his protection fee definitely does not cover property damage. He starts to realize that magic might not be the invincible force everyone makes it out to be. Elsewhere in the village, the locals are already gossiping about the smoke. Most of them just figure some drunk idiot set a small fire and go about their business. These hooded soldiers are not buying the drunk story though. Their leader senses something is off and orders his men to check every single person trying to leave the inn. On the outskirts, a kid points out a giant bird flying near the mountains. His mom just laughs it off and gives him a quick lesson on how perspective makes things look smaller from a distance. The kid was not imagining things. A massive, terrifying monster is actually soaring through the sky, and since it is flying right over the local houses, it is easily the size of a mountain. Mira is questioning the whole escort situation since she can just pop a barrier and call it a day. She is ready to speed run the trip to Itis in a carriage and thinks they will be there in no time. Tour shuts that down real quick by reminding her she has zero combat experience. She drops a truth bomb about how constant magic use might actually wreck Mira's body if the intensity keeps shifting. Realizing a slow carriage is basically a target on wheels, Mira starts to see the risk. She leans against a tree and gives Tura heartfelt thanks for sticking by her through all this stress. Tuir is still feeling salty about how ungrateful the citizens have been. She is convinced that if the people had not lost their minds, they would not be in this mess to begin with. Even after everything, Mira gazes at the distant horizon and tries to stay positive. She knows that pointing fingers at the public isn't going to help them survive. Elsewhere, Rawl finally catches up and offers an invitation to join the squad. While Mira is rocking in her cat ear hood to keep a low profile while they move, Juri tries to act all cute when Rawl shows up, but he is not buying it. He tells her to stop acting like she does not know what is going on so they can get down to business. Rawl calls out the arsonist for going too far and claims he can track their every move through mana residue. The culprit is left completely baffled by the concept of tracking mana traces. Juri immediately calls his bluff, pointing out that even a mage like her doesn't have the eyes to see mana traces. Rawl suggests a little rest after such a draining display of fire magic, but his intense vibe just scares Juri even more. A sudden thud sends her into a full-blown panic. Mira steps in to provide some undeniable proof by manifesting a high-level barrier out of thin air. Juri can't believe a girl who looks so unassuming is actually capable of such advanced magic. Feeling betrayed, Mira asks why she was chosen as a target for this attack. Rawl keeps it professional, declaring that he has no plans to involve the town or Mira in his business anymore. Juri starts sweating bullets and insists that she has absolutely no idea who Mira is. She wastes no time pinning the blame for the whole disaster on Rawl. It turns out the entire arson attempt was just a toxic way for Giri to get Rawl's attention because he was ignoring her. She pouts about his lack of focus while Mara stands there completely lost. Rawl is officially over it. He mentions that Diero's private soldiers are crawling all over the area and they kept grilling him with questions. Jiri explains that she just wanted the soldiers to feel uncomfortable. She figured a commotion would send them all rushing to investigate somewhere else. She admits the whole arson vibe was just a prank gone wrong. She only wanted to mess with the lock to scare them, but she pushed too hard and scorched the door. Our boy Rawl is not having it. He tells her to stop talking, pay for the door, and apologize to the innkeeper before they get followed. Mira notices Rawl is acting way more tense than usual. Between the mention of Diaro and the weird timing of their escort, he is clearly on high alert. Juri starts putting the pieces together and wonders if Mira is actually that one girl everyone is looking for. She finds it hard to believe a fake could use such advanced magic. Just as Juri is about to ask if Mira is a fake, the girl silences her with a finger to her lips. She begs for her identity to stay a secret while Rawl pushes them to leave before they are surrounded. Juri blocks their path to stop them from walking into a trap, pointing out a safer back route behind her. She drops some heavy lore about why the soldiers are so aggressive, explaining that rumors have turned Mira into a cursed villain in the public eye. The narrative is shifting to make Mira the scapegoat for every monster attack and minor scandal in the kingdom, and with the prince's approval, the people are buying it. Our boy Rawl takes the advice to heart while Jiri warns them that even regular civilians are chasing the reward now. Just as they try to move, a pair of soldiers catch them and demand that the short one in the robe reveals her face. Jiri triggers a distraction so the duo can make a break for it. Even while running for her life, Mira can't resist shouting back a final thank you for the delicious dried fruit. The soldiers are left dazed in the alleyway, while Jiri lies through her teeth to lead them away from the actual escape route. Raul maps out the escape route, deciding to hit the open plains instead of the mountains. He knows the high ground is a trap and they need to move fast. Town is a dead end with too many blind spots, but the hills are even worse because of the mountain horses. They keep moving while looking for a way out. The plan is to minimize every risk before they get cornered. Just as they make their move, the local guards spot them and order the squad to seize the duo. Hitting toward the farmlands helps narrow the chase since a straight run is a death sentence. They use the local terrain to force the soldiers into a predictable path. The soldiers level their crossbows and prepare to fire. They have orders to aim for the limbs and keep the targets alive, but the pursuit is getting aggressive. Raul waits for the right moment to give the signal while the soldiers decide that playing dirty is fine for criminals. Mira suddenly senses something massive approaching and tries to scream a warning. Pure chaos erupts as a massive shockwave tears through the trees, sending a cloud of birds into the sky. The ground shatters under the pressure while the duo pushes forward through the debris. The sky turns into a nightmare as a giant dragoon swoops in and sends the entire crowd into a panic. Raul stays focused on the scale of the monster as it drifts over the town like a dark cloud. Our boy doesn't hesitate and jacks a horse to make a fast break for it. Mira is stunned that he actually knows how to ride, but there is no time to chat while the owner is having a breakdown in the background. They spot a caravan trying to reach the border, hoping the nearby village will offer some protection. The air is thick with smaller monsters trailing the big one, turning the entire landscape into a war zone. Raul decides to cut right through the caravan to use their guards as a temporary shield. It is a cold move, but they have to keep moving if they want any chance of getting out alive. A giant shadow looms over the trail as the dragoon locks onto the fleeing crowd as its main target. Raul keeps his eyes on the path, knowing they can't possibly save everyone in this chaos. Elsewhere, some sneaky guys see the attack as the perfect chance to slip away now that Dairo's men have fled the scene. They want to hit the border before refugees flood the roads and block the exit. The crowd starts looking for someone to blame and decides the fake saint brought this whole disaster on them. Raul tells Mira to focus on his voice and ignore the people screaming for her head. Raul and Mira are speeding away while everyone else gets wrecked by monsters. He tells her he is not choosing between them and her because his only job is to keep her alive. Our boy says he does not care about saintly rules or duty if it means she gets hurt. Mira looks at the chaos behind them and starts feeling like she is running from her own purpose. Flashback logic kicks in as Mira remembers why she wanted to be a saint in the first place. She realizes she cannot just ease her own worries while others suffer. The locals are mauling and blaming Mira for their bad luck. They think everything would be better if the so-called fake saint had never shown up in their town. Mira has had enough of running and jumps off the horse to make a stand. She unleashes a massive magic circle to flex her power on the approaching swarm. Raul watches her in awe as he finally understands the weight of her title. Meanwhile, the monster horde is growing larger and the local guards are shaking in their boots. Our MC does not leave her hanging and prepares to go all out with his bandage blade. He knows they just need to buy enough time for the evacuation to finish. Our duo decides to stop playing defense and goes on the offensive. Raul tells Mira they have to give it their all before he starts carving through the monster swarm. Raul yells out a plan to thin the numbers while Mira handles the heavy lifting for protection. The people on the ground are still losing their minds, praying for any kind of miracle. Mira spots the big boss dragon constantly spawning new threats and knows she has to take it down. A normal purification won't work on something that massive, especially with her lack of combat training. Despite the warnings about her body giving out, our girl decides to go for broke. She starts sprinting toward the beast, intending to end the fight with a single blow. She traps the giant monster inside a concentrated barrier to maximize the impact. The plan is to dump her entire mana pool into a single compressed point of purification. Mira keeps pushing her limits and demands even more power from her magic. The civilians can only stare in silence as she turns the sky into a war zone of pure energy. She throws everything she has into the final strike. It is a high-stakes gamble to see if her saintly power is enough to wipe the dragon off the map. The entire sky turns into a blinding void as Mira's power detonates and rewrites the map. Jiri just watches the fireworks with a casual smile, not even bothered by the chaos. Raul catches Mira just as she finally hits her limit and blacks out from the mana drain. Even a seasoned pro like him can't believe the mere aftershock of her spell wiped everything off the map. That heavy weight Mira has been carrying for years finally starts to lift as she sees the villagers are safe. She never wanted the glory, she just needed to know she could actually protect someone for once. Lord Jader steps up to calm the terrified children while the dust finally settles on the horizon. He keeps a cool head while already suspecting that the massive flash of light didn't come from any monster. The people are absolutely losing it after watching a single girl delete a disaster-class dragon in an instant. They are convinced it was some kind of divine miracle, wondering if what they saw was even real or just a massive illusion. The kids are leading the hype train, shouting about how that big sister saved them and calling her a total saint. Even in the middle of all the chaos, People are already starting to worship her. The soldiers are already on the move, scanning the crowd and asking where the girl went. They know something world-changing just happened and they want answers. Mira finally wakes up in a quiet room, still dazed from the massive mana drain. Our boy Raul is right there by the door, keeping watch like a pro and simply telling her she is finally awake. Raul greets her with his usual dry humor, asking if the straw bed was comfy enough for her royal standards. Mira is totally flustered, stuttering out a good morning before scrambling to tidy herself up. Turns out they are currently hiding in a borrowed hut at the edge of a random farming village. Mira is shocked to learn she has been out cold for 3 whole days. Mira starts apologizing for running off and ignoring his warnings, but Raul is not interested in the drama. He shuts her down immediately, telling her to forget about him and focus on whether her body actually works. Mira analyzes her weird new power, figuring the backlash only happened because it was her first time using it. She is surprised to find herself full of energy, feeling a fresh surge of power welling up inside her. Raul gives her the post-game report, mentioning that the villagers salvaged their cargo and made it to town. It is a miracle that nobody was seriously hurt considering how large that monster attack was. After dropping the good news, Raul reveals the catch. Mira is disappointed as he casually tells her they lost all their supplies during the escape. He explains that the supplies got ditched during the scuffle with Diero's men, and Mira's bag probably ripped off when she activated her barrier. All their gear is long gone, scattered somewhere in the middle of nowhere. The final verdict is in, and Raul confirms that they are officially and completely broke. Mira's whole world stops as she processes the reality of having a zero balance. Outside their hut, a crowd of villagers is begging for a glimpse of the miracle saint to thank her. Raul admits he is acting as her shield because they come every day, telling her that her choice to jump in really did save lives. He finishes by telling her she straight up deserves all that praise. Mira just looks away, not quite ready to believe that she actually did something admirable. Mira admits she is not as saintly as everyone thinks, confessing her deep-seated anger to Raul while they hide out. She looks at her hands in the quiet hut, finally letting out the bitterness she has been hiding behind her role. A scene from her past shows her standing before the temple elders, learning about the heavy legacy of a saint. She recalls the weight of 80 years of fear that her home kingdom still has to face. Her first duty as a saint was a simple journey out of the castle, full of modest hopes for a future where the people loved her back. At the time, Prince Arthur was right by her side, supporting her as she stepped into the light. The carriage rolled through the streets to a sea of cheering faces, and she felt a genuine sense of pride in her heart. She truly wanted to live up to that warm welcome and be the hero they expected. For over a year, she dedicated herself to the people and built what she thought were unbreakable bonds. Every handshake and every smile felt like proof that she was finally making a difference. Despite her best efforts to stay strong and move forward, seeing the memory of Arthur's cold face makes it difficult. She thought she was ready to leave the past behind, but the pain of that betrayal is still there. During the moment of her exile, she chose to stay silent and accept the hatred of the crowd to avoid causing more chaos. She convinced herself the people were not to blame for their anger, even as they screamed for her head. Mira looks back on her time as a saint and wonders if any of it actually mattered. Even when the crowd turned on her, she tried her best to play the bigger person and not hold a grudge. The realization that the kingdom replaced her so easily hits hard. Our girl wonders if they only saw her as an outsider the entire time. That doubt caused her to hesitate for a split second during their escape. Even now, she cannot help but think about how many people actually believe the rumors about her being a fraud. She feels like she failed her duty and is frustrated that she is actually angry about it. It is that bitter feeling of being betrayed by the very ideals she tried to live by. Raul steps in and tells her that feeling this way is completely normal. He explains that she is allowed to be angry even if she logically understands why things went south. He looks at her with a new sense of clarity. At the end of the day, she is human, and that realization hits him pretty hard. While others like Mariel brag about being a perfect saint, Raul starts to see the truth. He realizes Mira is special because she keeps her ideals even when everyone else walks away. Raul is having a serious moment of clarity. He realizes he was starting to put Mira on a pedestal and feels like an idiot for it. He looks at her and remembers that she is just a person, which is exactly why she is different. Dropping the tough guy act, Raul offers a sincere apology. He admits he never really understood what a true saint was until this moment. Mira gives him a warm smile. She says his way of thinking is natural and thanks him for trying to cheer her up. Our boy gets back to business and asks her what she wants to do next. Mira looks him in the eye and decides to be open. She tells him she wants to share every thought on her mind. Glancing around their temporary shelter, she admits she could rest a bit longer since she just woke up, but there is something else. Mira breaks the heavy silence by admitting she is hungry, and Raul surprisingly agrees. Saintly duties die hard and she still wants to help every single person if she can. Something is eating at her. She realized that no new barrier was set up in the capital after her own magic faded away. She only accepted exile because she thought a new saint would take over the barrier. Now she is terrified that if Marielle is a fraud, the capital's people are cooked before her brother even arrives. The memories of monster attacks haunt her as she imagines the chaos spreading through the kingdom. Even though she tried to leave it to her brother, that split second of hesitation showed her the faces of everyone begging for help. Mira refuses to stand by while people die, even if Raul reminds her just how terrible they treated her. Mira admits she really did not understand the weight of her role. She finally gets that her silence as a fake saint probably scared the people way more than she ever realized. She still cannot believe how fast things escalated and thinks the plan to capture her is total nonsense. Raul just smirks and asks if she is annoyed, which clearly hits a nerve. Raul stands up with a new plan and tells her it is time to go. He wants to save every single person, and he wants to do it with just the two of them. No more hiding in the shadows. He is ready to reveal her true identity and show everyone what the real Saint of Idas can do. Up until now they were just focused on survival and getting her home. But since they are switching to hero mode, there is no reason to stay under the radar anymore. Raul tells her that her duty is not over yet. He wants her to see it through on her own terms and promises to break any shackles holding her back. This is the start of the second act. Mira realizes this is the beginning of her second life in this country. Mira is stressing about her brother and tour. Raul tries to play it cool, promising to explain the situation later. Raul suggests a high-risk move to get her brother's attention. Just start acting like the real saint and the word will definitely reach him. Mira is still doubting herself. She feels like she is just an unwanted intruder in a country that already picked their favorite girl. Raul shuts down the self-doubt by reminding her the king is the one who dragged her here. He warns her that some people are going to be haters, and others will just try to exploit her power. He steps up and pledges to be her personal protector. Whether it is a blade or his bare hands, he is ready to clear the path so they can actually save some lives. Mira is stunned by the sudden loyalty. Raul just keeps it simple, claiming he is just following his gut just like she is. He plays it off as a practical business decision. Keeping her safe and minimizing the body count just makes his job easier in the long run. Raul keeps it real, telling her to trust her own heart above all else. Trusting her brother was the right move, even if things feel heavy right now. He gives her the ultimate vote of confidence by promising to believe in the person she truly is. This is a major turning point for her to finally have someone in her corner. Outside, the villagers decide to call it a day and give the Lady Saint some space to rest. Inside, the air feels heavy while Mira braces herself for the moment that will change everything. The time for hiding is officially over. She steps out with zero hesitation, announcing herself to the world as the third princess of Idas and the real saint. We kicks off with chaos as a monster descends on a terrified village. Locals are panicking and telling everyone to get the kids to safety while others scramble for anything they can use to fight back. Just when things look bleak, Raul drops in and swings his blade to intercept the beast. Villagers watch in shock as this mysterious warrior stands his ground against the threat. Raul keeps it cool and tells the crowd they are safe now. Behind him, Mira steps forward with a smile that proves the cavalry has officially arrived. Mira doesn't waste any time and introduces herself as the Princess Idas. She announces that she already purified the area with her power and tells the people the danger is finally gone. The crowd starts connecting the dots, recognizing her as the legendary silver-haired saint. Gratitude washes over the village as they realize the woman from the stories just saved them. Despite the heroics, a few villagers are still confused about her reputation. They start whispering and asking if she is the same saint who was exiled by the royal family. Instead of backing down, Mira stares them down with confidence. She shuts down the rumors immediately and declares that her exile was nothing but a mistake. Raul is tired of being the scapegoat and decides to share just enough truth to keep his conscience clean. The villagers are left scratching their heads as he maps out his plan to avoid causing total chaos. Enter Vincent the Miller, who is stunned to see the princess actually standing in his village. Mira keeps it cool and tells the crowd she is only there because someone finally asked for help. The vibe gets a bit suspicious when Marcel's the blacksmith notices they are traveling without any royal attendants. Raul watches the crowd closely while Mira prepares her next move. Mira does not hesitate to hype up her partner. She tells everyone he is not just some random adventurer, but a top-tier swordsman with serious ties to the royal family. Total chaos breaks out as the villagers bombard her with questions about the fake saint. Jules the cattleman and the rest are spiraling, wondering what happens to their kingdom now that the truth is out. Raul gives Mira some solid advice on how to handle the pressure. He tells her to ignore the noise and focus on delivering one clear message to the people. Facing the desperate crowd, Mira acknowledges their pain and asks for their trust. She cannot give them every answer yet, but her resolve to save them is undeniable. Mira gives the crowd a saintly smile and promises she is officially on the side of the people. While the villagers are busy getting emotional, Raul cuts in to let her know the horses are finally ready for their exit. She does not have time to stay for tea and reminds everyone they need to hurry to the next group of survivors. To give the village some peace of mind, she mentions a new protective barrier is already in place. The locals practically beg her to stay and rest, feeling like they have not thanked her enough yet. Raul stays focused on the mission, while the crowd shouts their gratitude at their departing backs. They finally mount up and ride out with Mira waving a cheerful goodbye to her new fan club. The ride is on as they leave the village behind to face the next crisis. Suddenly, a couple of cloaked guys show up to offer their thanks for being saved during the monster chaos. Raul is not buying the act and immediately identifies them as the same trash soldiers who aimed at the princess earlier. Realizing they are busted, the soldiers drop to the ground and start begging for their lives. They know they messed up big time by targeting the real saint and start spiraling in fear. Raul decides to collect a survival tax by demanding their horse and their wallet to call things even. He tells Mira it is time to move out while she gives the guys a cheerful wave goodbye. The soldiers are left stranded and broke, screaming about their lost ride while the duo heads for the hills. The word is finally out. Locals watch as the duo rides into the distance, realizing the rumors about the saint are actually true. The village chief decides it is time to spread the news that Mira is the real deal and definitely not a fraud. The gossip mill is hitting critical mass across the kingdom. People everywhere are whispering about how she is actually a princess who can erase dragons in the blink of an eye. Even the skeptics are starting to realize that a girl riding a demon horse might be the real thing. Even the guild staff is starting to put the pieces together. Kazami looks back on their meeting and realizes that Mira's calm demeanor under pressure was a total dead giveaway. The mention of the massive sword makes everything finally click for her. The vibe at the guild has shifted completely. Veteran adventurers are already jumping on the bandwagon, figuring out that backing the real royalty is the smartest play they can make. They are already clowning on the thugs who were dumb enough to pick a fight with her earlier. Jiri is out here doing some unofficial public relations work for her new boss. She is hanging out with the local kids and making sure they know the real Lady Mira does not need cheap tricks to get results. She even hypes up the crazy barrier magic that nearly shut her down. Naturally, the contract mage finds a way to make a profit. She tells the crowd she will keep her mouth shut unless they start buying her preserves, basically extorting them for sales. The locals just laugh it off and keep calling her the Mushroom Lady while they buy in. Elsewhere, not everyone is ready to believe the hype just yet. Some grumpy villagers are facing down a monster, and they are still convinced the whole thing is just another trick to fool them. They refuse to fall for any more saintly miracles. Mira is out here flashing her best hero smile and promising to be everyone's shield no matter what happens. The locals are not exactly rolling out the red carpet yet, looking at her with nothing but pure suspicion. Our girl is hitting every stop on the map to drop the royalty card and clear her name. People are starting to realize that a princess riding a demon horse might actually be the real deal. Naturally, the haters are still out in force. This dude is trying to keep the old propaganda alive by shouting that she is just a fake who has been playing the whole country for fools. Elsewhere, the gossip mill is working overtime to explain why Marielle is missing while Mara is out here saving lives. They are literally inventing theories about curses just to stay in denial about the truth. The debate is getting intense as people bring up the dragon she just took down. The skeptics are trying to call it an illusion, but the wrecked wagons and cargo are a bit too real to ignore. Some people are finally dropping the act and admitting that the official story never actually added up. They are starting to suspect that the higher-ups are just treating the monarchy like a personal toy. The eyewitness accounts are finally hitting the streets and changing the vibe. Now that a real survivor is telling the story of how Lady Mira saved them, everyone is leaning in to hear the truth. Word is finally reaching the top. These scouts are watching the public's opinion pull a full 180, and they know they need to report this massive shift to Lord Leroyd immediately. The village chief is having a total spiritual awakening after hosting the real saint. He is looking back at his old life and realizing how much everything has changed, all while Mira quietly prepares to head out. Mira is in high spirits, basically turning into a chibi ball of energy while Raul stays as deadpan as ever. They leave the poor chief completely drained from all the excitement of their visit. Camping under the stars, Mira is finally getting a handle on her power without any nasty side effects. They have been busy setting up a network of barriers to keep every town they visit safe from the chaos. Mira is genuinely impressed by how the local villagers are holding it together despite all the monster damage. Raul reminds her that their toughness is fueled by the hope she brought to this country, even if she tries to play it off as simple cleanup. Staring into the campfire, they reflect on 80 years of survival in this kingdom. It turns out the people were not just living in fear, they were actually thriving in their own incredibly stubborn way. Raul notes that this cycle of survival has been the same since way before his grandfather's time. Even if the land is cursed, the people's refusal to give up is the one thing that never changes. The local villagers are keeping it real, admitting that no matter how much the kingdom rots, they just keep on grinding. They have been here since day one, and a fake saint drama is not enough to stop their hustle. Raul is not buying the royal PR anymore, knowing the people will eventually see through the throne's lies. He stares into the fire, realizing the clock is ticking for the monarchy. Mira knows her time in the wild is limited and eventually she has to head back to a king who is stuck in bed. She is worried about who is really running the show, because the country is headed for a massive trust crisis that hasn't been seen in 80 years. Mira suggests Arthur's half-brother, Prince Jader, might be the pillar they need, but he is currently ghosting the castle and wandering the provinces. Our boy Rawl is skeptical, wondering if this second prince is even around to help. It is kind of wild to put all your hope in someone you have never even met. Mira just stares at the sky, wishing for a miracle return that would change everything. Suddenly, the radar goes off as someone trips their magical barrier. It is not a monster this time, so they stay on high alert to see who is crashing their camp. Instead of hiding, Mira steps up and drops the royal title immediately. She introduces herself as a princess of Itis and asks how she can help, proving she is fully done playing the victim. A few kids come sprinting out of the woods, begging for someone to come to their village because someone is hurt. They seem shocked to hear that a princess might be nearby. Rawl asks if there are any adults available to help, but Mira just smiles and tells them she is coming right now. She promises everything will be okay as they start moving toward the village. As the group heads into the forest, the kids explain that they are all on their own. Apparently, an injured outsider showed up, and the children had to split up just to find help. Rawl is impressed by their quick thinking, but the mood changes when they mention a name called Jader. Suddenly, a tall figure in a coat appears from the shadows and says he has finally found them. Prince Jader steps out of the brush looking completely out of breath, but relieved to see the children. He is stunned when he realizes he is actually standing in front of the real saint, Lady Mira. The prince drops to one knee and delivers a line that nobody expected. He looks Mira in the eyes and asks her to marry him, leaving everyone in a state of pure shock. Jader is all smiles, admitting the mission was a bit of a gamble but praising Mira's power for making the save. The kids aren't holding back, calling him the reckless one while Jader tries to apologize to Mira for his dusty appearance. Rawl takes the report on the village supplies, while Jader notes that they should start thinking about their next hunt soon. A wide shot reveals the massive mountain valley as the group finally reaches the village they call home. The town is hyped to see Jader made it back, and he immediately takes the chance to introduce Mira as the real saint and princess. After checking in at the main house, Jader suggests a group meal but lets Rawl know they have some serious business to discuss. Mira finishes her healing work with an injured villager, leaving him crying in relief while Jader watches with a proud smile. Back inside, Jader provides a royal ring as proof of his identity, and Rawl finally accepts that they are dealing with the real prince. They settle in to go over the details of their current situation. Jader respects Mira for continuing her work despite the slander from his own family. He knows they have to deal with the monsters alone, but the public fallout from his brother's actions is the real threat. Rawl questions if Jader is truly ready to jump into the middle of the upcoming chaos to save the people. Jader confirms he is ready for whatever comes next. Protecting the people is the duty of a royal, and Jader refuses to let Mira's efforts go to waste. Rawl is relieved that the prince is actually prepared for the consequences of their plan. The prince offers a formal apology for the royal family's disrespect and thanks Mira for protecting the village. He is keeping things professional despite the messy situation. Mira tells him to stop with the formalities since his sincerity is enough. She claims her fight against the monsters was just her own selfish decision. The mood shifts when Mira asks what was up with that marriage proposal from earlier, but Jader seems to be drawing a total blank. Jader explains the logic behind his proposal, aiming to bridge the gap between their nations and give the people some peace of mind. He figures a formal alliance is the fastest way to stabilize the region. Mira puts on the brakes immediately, reminding Jader that her brother the king makes the big calls. Her firm stance shuts down the sudden proposal while Rawl stays well out of the crossfire. Jader isn't ready to end the meeting just yet and invites them to stay as guests of honor. He insists that letting them leave in their current state would be a stain on his reputation. After a silent exchange with Rawl, Mira decides to take him up on the offer. She wants to hear the full story of the village before they move on to their next destination. The group settles in for a massive feast of mountain greens and fresh fish. The mood turns heavy as the kids explain how the monster attack forced the adults to flee and leave them behind. It turns out Jader was just passing through after visiting his sick mother when he stumbled upon the abandoned children. Instead of leaving, he stayed to teach them how to fend for themselves in the wild. The bombshell drops when Rawl mentions the local monsters have already been dealt with. Jader is ready to mobilize immediately and bring the rest of the villagers back home. Jader keeps it wholesome for the kids, promising they will see their mother again soon. He gives them a gentle smile when they ask if he will be staying with them as well. The man is already up and about, offering to head out and spread the news of their safety. Jader asks if he is doing okay, but the guy refuses to sit around while the children are doing all the work. The traveler explains how his guards ditched him, leaving him penniless and almost getting the children in serious trouble. Raul can only focus on the fact that they are broke, while Mira tells the man it cannot be helped since he was acting out of desperation. Looking out over the village houses, the group realizes that protecting every single path is impossible. They have to figure out if securing the major towns will be enough to keep the region safe. Raul focuses on the harsh reality of their mission. Even if they narrow their search, managing Mira's energy and planning the routes is going to be a massive time sink. Mira starts spiraling into a series of what-if scenarios. She worries about the kingdom becoming too dependent on her and wonders if overlapping barriers will cause some kind of magical glitch. The guilt starts to weigh on Mira as she apologizes for not being fast enough to save the man's cargo. He immediately waves her off, insisting that she has no reason to feel responsible for the disaster. The manpower shortage is hitting the locals hard. Not only are the guards exhausted, but Diero's private soldiers just vanished right when they were needed most. Raul points out that landslides are keeping the capital completely cut off from the world. With no eyes on the city, their only options are a long detour or charging straight through the rubble. Jader is left reflecting on how a few extra minutes might have changed everything. He looks out over the landscape, realizing the true scale of the work ahead. The warmth of the village hospitality really hits home for the group. Sitting at a crowded table with the locals feels like a piece of normalcy they haven't had in ages. Jader stays humble while the villagers scramble to show their gratitude. Meanwhile, Raul and Mira share a quick look as they prepare for the next step of their journey. Mira breaks the silence with a sudden question for the prince. She asks if it would be okay for them to stick around the village for a while longer. Jader is caught completely off guard, but Mira already has a plan. She explains that hunting monsters based on rumors has its limits, and the group finally needs a permanent base of operations. Raul explains that the village is the perfect base for patrolling the roads and managing their magical barriers. Mira adds that even if the people come back eventually, they are going to need all the help they can get right now. Mira is feeling herself, telling everyone that having them around is like having 100 extra people. The kids go absolutely feral with excitement, realizing they now have a princess and a powerhouse warrior to help with the hunting and farm work. Jader is left speechless when Mira tells him that he is the one who gets to decide when enough is enough. The children watch as the young prince takes in the massive responsibility she just handed him. Jader wonders if he is really the right guy for the job, but the choice is already made. Mira declares herself a full-time resident and immediately bolts toward the house to start prepping the bedding. The calm moment is gone instantly as the kids start shouting about who gets to sleep in the princess room. Jader looks up in total disbelief at the sudden noise. Raul is not about to get caught up in the housing drama and starts walking away with his giant sword. Jader asks where he is headed, and the warrior simply says his bed can wait while he goes to the forge for some maintenance. As the warrior walks off, Jader watches him with a heavy, knowing expression. He mutters a title that shifts everything we know about our protector, calling him Prince Raul. Jader isn't playing around. He points out that Raul's crimson hair makes his royal red-eye blood obvious and asks for a moment of his time. Scene change. The two men sit down near the village church for a private talk. Jader is quick to apologize, making it clear he isn't trying to blow Raul's cover. Our boy keeps his cool. He mentions the sound of the forge travels far, while Jader reveals he was placed under house arrest for visiting his mother. It wasn't a matter of safety, he was just barred from the capital. Raul stays silent as the prince explains the restrictions he faced. Flashback. Jader recalls people pushing him to take the crown. He knew immediately that his brother was cooking up a scheme to get rid of him. A bit of validation goes a long way as Raul tells him being forced out doesn't mean he was unfit to rule. Jader just shrugs it off, claiming his personality isn't built for power, and he never really wanted the throne. After noticing some shady business in the kingdom, he gave his watchers the slip to protect his mother. That is how he finally landed in this village. Jader is spiraling, questioning why he didn't just ditch the kids to fulfill his royal duties. Knowing the right answer is one thing, but actually choosing it is a whole different story. He had every chance to return to the capital, but his feet stayed planted with the children. Meanwhile, Mira was being cast out and slandered while he remained off the grid. The weight of the kingdom's collapse is sitting heavy on his shoulders. He blames his own lack of responsibility for his father's fall and Mira's current struggle. A bit of what-if thinking starts to creep in about returning to the castle earlier. Still, he admits that running away to save those kids is a choice he won't ever regret. He refuses to use the kids as a shield for his actions. To him, hiding behind them is the lowest play possible. The plan is to keep things quiet so the children don't get swept up in the coming storm. He just wants to apologize and keep the peace. Jader's ready to play it cool, but Raul instantly shuts it down. Apparently the secret's been out for a while, and even the kids have already connected the dots. Jader is left speechless. The logic is hitting him harder than any sword could. Raul keeps it real by pointing out that the prince's secrecy was actually making the villagers worry. It is a harsh reality check for someone trying to be a hero in the shadows. Rushing into a sealed capital is basically a suicide mission. Our boy explains that his perspective as an adventurer gives him a clearer view of the danger. Jader just needed a reason to stay and help without feeling guilty. Raul saw right through the prince's stubborn act and gave him the excuse he needed. Preparation is not the same as avoiding responsibility. Raul notices that Jader and Mira share the exact same struggle when it comes to being honest about their goals. The prince admits he has always admired the saint from a distance. Meeting her in person finally brought all those old stories to life. He confesses that meeting her created a feeling he has never experienced before. This dude is clearly catching some serious feelings. Raul admits he only framed his actions as a cold political move to make the truth easier for the prince to handle. Jader isn't fooled though, nervously asking if the adventurer saw right through him from the start. Our boy just flashes a smirk and decides to play dumb, promising to pretend he didn't hear a single word of the confession. Jader is left malfunctioning in the background while the heavy weight of responsibility finally starts to sink in. Word spread fast in these parts. After Jader told everyone about the village of kids, adventurers and townsfolk started pulling up to help. They are all grateful for Mira's protection and want to give back for everything she has done. Jader is feeling the vibes, but Mira is staring at the new guys with a major case of déjà vu. She is sure she has seen them somewhere before. Turns out they are the survivors she saved earlier. They are back to pay her back for literally saving their lives from the monsters. The whole village is getting a massive glow-up. Everyone is pitching in to fix roofs and clear ruins while Mira helps out with the cooking. It is a total team effort to turn this place into a real home. As night falls, Raul takes the first shift in the new watchtower. He keeps a sharp eye on the perimeter while joking that the village is officially closed for the day. A little light cuts through the dark as Mira climbs up with a lantern and a basket. She brought some late-night snacks to thank him for his hard work. Raul starts to scold her for being out so late but stops himself to welcome her into the tower. He takes the basket and makes some room in his cramped little lookout. Mira and Raul chill together, marveling at how the village is bouncing back. It is officially the safest spot in the kingdom now that everyone is pitching in to expand the defenses. Turns out Prince Jader has been carrying the whole operation on his back, personally managing the food supplies and the crowd of survivors. The dude worked himself to the bone making sure everything ran smoothly for the village. Things almost got heated between the locals, but Jader was always there to keep the peace. Mira realizes that Raul also has a special way of talking sense into the rowdy adventurers that the common folk just cannot handle. No matter how exhausted he was, Jader never missed a chance to watch Mira perform her saintly healing magic. He stayed focused on her every move, letting everyone know how much he looked up to her. Raul keeps it real, telling Mira that her hard work is the source of energy for Jader. Mira takes it in, quietly wondering if the two guys have actually become besties while she was not looking. The word is spreading fast, and even the merchants are having a hard time deciding their next move. With the village stabilized and the guards actually being friendly for once, the vibe in the kingdom is finally starting to shift. Mira reveals a basket of fresh treats she learned to make with the local kids. It is a small, sweet win for the team after all the drama they have been through. Mira serves up some sweet beans while reflecting on how the village is finally healing. The homes and fields are back to normal, and the vibe is peaceful for once. Raul gives her a rare, gentle look. He tells her there is no rush and she can take all the time she needs to talk. She pouts, calling him unfair for reading her like an open book. He just laughs it off, noticing she has gotten way more assertive since they started this journey. Raul points out that a girl like her should not be wandering alone at night without a good reason. She stays quiet, her mind already moving to the next phase of their plan. The results of their hard work are showing as monster attacks drop to levels not seen in years. While the borders are safe, the people's faith in the royal family is hitting rock bottom. Jader takes on the role of village mediator, working behind the scenes to keep the peace. He is coordinating with local nobles to ensure the village stays stable even if they have to leave. Mira is done playing defense. She looks Raul in the eye and declares that she is heading back to the capital to confront Prince Arthur. The mountain path is finally passable after a month of landslides. Mira is eager to see if her removing the barriers is the reason the capital is currently under a blockade. Reports suggest her brother has already visited the capital at least once. Even if the locals are safe, Arthur's next move after his purge is still a mystery. Our girl isn't leaving without answers. She needs to see and hear the truth for herself to finally find some closure. Our boy munches on his snack while weighing the risks of the situation. This setup feels a little too convenient to be a coincidence, but he chooses to respect her will and follow her lead. Before they make a move, they need to hear back from the scouts outside the village. The immediate plan is to link up with Lord Leroyd as soon as possible. Reunited at last, Mira is overwhelmed by the thought of seeing her brother and Tour again. Raul isn't staying behind either, intending to confront Prince Arthur himself. Raul pulls out a ring and leaves Mira speechless. He claims he has the right to be there, revealing the ancient seal of the divine wolf. Our boy drops the ultimate flex, confirming he is indeed a prince of the fallen Redeye kingdom. This reveal makes his connection to the royal lineage undeniable. He starts opening up about the past, admitting he actually met Mira's father when he was just a kid. It turns out the old king of Idis had visited his home years ago. Back then, a young Rawl happened to overhear a heavy conversation between his father and the king. They were discussing things far beyond a child's understanding at the time. The king held a tiny Mira, calling her a special saint born with a heavy destiny. Even back then, her path was already being decided by the adults around her. Back in the present, Rawl sets the record straight by telling her that her kindness doesn't come from some forced mission. He sees that she is helping people simply because she chose to be true to her own heart. He doesn't stop there, pointing out that even Jader has been trying his best to take responsibility despite his past blunders. It is a rare moment of genuine validation for everyone involved. Even the local villagers were doing their best to keep moving forward, refusing to let fear and despair win. Everyone was just trying to survive in their own way. Jader is staring into the void, wondering if Arthur can actually handle the smoke when his own people and brothers start asking questions. Rawl fixes his gear and drops a cryptic warning. He says Mira will soon find out the real reason why she cannot just put all the blame on Arthur. Our girl just keeps it wholesome with a soft smile. She is certain that things will work out. The trauma dump is real. Rawl explains that his whole kingdom went down in flames because they trusted a saint, and he has been a hater ever since. Without anything left to believe in, he spent years drifting through the world as a hollow adventurer. Even when he was out there playing the hero, it did not fix anything. Every life he saved just fueled his own self-loathing. But the heavy vibes vanish the moment he takes a bite. He is munching on a snack and realizing his revenge plot is not nearly as important as a good meal. Mira looks up from her drink, surprised by the sudden shift in the conversation. Rawl asks if she is doing okay while dropping some heavy truth about their first meeting. A montage of her journey shows Mira actually enjoying the role of a saint for the first time. She was finally living according to her own feelings instead of just following a script. Rawl admits that for him, saints were always just tools that were either good or bad with no middle ground. Seeing Mira get angry, laugh, and just be a normal person changed his entire perspective. Sitting together under the night sky, Rawl drops the news that he has made a big decision. He has been thinking about his talk with Jader and is finally ready to stop running from his name. He looks her in the eye with a rare smile and says he is heading back to his home kingdom of Redai once they reach the border. It is time for him to face the ruins of his past. Even with his home crawling with monsters, he is convinced there is still something he can do to help. The man is finally embracing his royal responsibility. He is done pretending he does not see the truth about the fake saint or his own duty. It is time for him to step up and be the prince his people lost. Mira realizes Rawl has finally found a goal of his own. She gives him a soft look, acknowledging his decision to head back home. Rawl drops his guard for a second and gives her a genuine smile. He tells her straight up that he is glad they met. The vibe shifts to a goofy dinner scene where Mira stuffs her face and worries about her brother. She jokes that his sweet talk sounds way too much like a series finale for her comfort. Rawl just laughs, reminding her that everything eventually has to end. A few days later, the peaceful atmosphere is gone. The village temple is packed with injured refugees from the capital. Rawl takes command of the chaos, telling the guards to clear space while warning Mira not to drain her magic all at once. Mira is visibly stressed as the scale of the disaster sets in. She is left wondering how they could have possibly missed the warning signs of such a massive attack. While she works to save as many as she can, an injured man recognizes her. He begs for forgiveness, admitting the people of the capital were completely wrong to ever turn their backs on her. The news hits like a physical blow. The royal capital is officially gone. With the capital in a panic, the citizens are losing their minds because the royal temple is being torn down, and the crown is blaming everything on a mysterious spiritual impurity. Arthur stands with his back to the crowd, watching the chaos unfold. Prince Arthur addresses the masses from the palace balcony. He claims the old ways were cursed and promises a new era of purity alongside a mysterious new saint who stands in the shadows. The official propaganda hits the streets as a massive decree is released. It orders everyone to praise Ariano as the one true savior and pray for the future of Roideris. Things get dark fast as the palace claims even personal wealth is a source of rot. While the nobles plot in secret, soldiers are literally looting homes and taking treasure from the peasants for purification. To finish the purge, the massive capital gates are slammed shut. Roideris is officially on lockdown to keep the rot from spreading any further. Arthur is done playing games and turns on his own allies. He has Count Dairo arrested for treason right on the spot, and the guards drag the terrified noble away while the prince watches with a cold stare. The prince is cleaning house and ordering Dairo's private army to be disbanded immediately. He makes it clear that anyone who refuses his new rules is a traitor to the kingdom. The citizens watched in horror as the Grand Temple was dismantled piece by piece. They could not believe the crown was actually going through with such a drastic move. Ariano revealed a grim plan to line the city walls with monster corpses to ward off the horde. She claimed that by surrounding themselves with the physical form of death, They would terrify any creature that dared to approach. The crowd was disgusted by the sight of the decaying bodies and begged for a clean purification instead. Ariano just shut them down, explaining that the visible rot was nothing compared to the invisible curse hidden within the land. She argued that simple healing was just a temporary fix for a much deeper problem. Until the source of the rot was destroyed, the monsters would just keep coming back forever. She went on to say that the previous saints had lied for years just to protect their high status. As the only one with actual power, she claimed it was her duty to finally speak the harsh truth. Back in the streets, the lockdown was quickly turning into a nightmare for the average citizen. People were broke and hungry, with no way to contact their families or even afford basic food. Prince Arthur just laughed off their suffering, dismissing their struggles as mere trivialities. He was convinced that his new kingdom would be a historical miracle that would make every other nation look weak. The vibes in the capital are at an all-time low as the propaganda starts backfiring. People are whispering in the shadows, blaming whole families for the curse and wondering if Arthur has finally lost his mind. Some people are still trying to cope by saying the new saint is doing what needs to be done, even while the soldiers are falling sick. They are desperate to believe the miasma is being purified, but the mounting bodies tell a different story. Back at the palace, Arthur is officially spiraling and clinging to his fake saint like a life raft. He is doubling down on her power, hoping it can still salvage this disaster. That confidence evaporates the second he hears the bad news. The reality of his situation is finally setting in, and he realizes his miracle worker might have actually dipped. Inside the council room, the palace is in a frenzy because the saint has vanished without leaving a single trace. Every project she started is left unfinished, and his advisors are starting to realize they were sold a lie. He tries to go into full damage control mode, barking orders at his staff to find her and cover up the truth. His only plan now is to keep the public in the dark before his entire regime crumbles. The messenger drops a truth bomb and reveals that the secret is already out. Every citizen in the capital already watched the saint abandon them in broad daylight. Ariano gives the capital one last cold goodbye before walking right out of the front gates. Not a single look back for the people she left behind. Panic is setting in as Arthur listens to the situation outside spiral out of control. The constant screaming from the crowds below is finally starting to crack his composure. A full-blown riot is brewing outside the palace gates with the citizens demanding to know where their saint went. They are officially done with the royal family's lies and want their money back. The streets have turned into a graveyard as families turn on each other in their grief. Arthur can only watch in silence as his perfect kingdom crumbles into a nightmare of rot. Desperate times call for desperate measures, and the citizens are already starting to burn the monster corpses. Arthur is paralyzed by the sight of black smoke swallowing his city while the talk of treason begins. Pillars of darkness consume the horizon as Arthur watches from his high balcony. He is still trying to convince himself that none of this is his fault, even while his own people watch him with pure disgust. The shadow of a giant monster entity finally tears through the city streets. People are scrambling in a state of panic, begging for someone to let them inside before they get swallowed whole. The capital is officially falling apart. Soldiers are slamming the iron gates shut to lock themselves inside while the people outside scream in rage. Looters are already stripping the buildings bare, crying that the world is coming to an end. It's a total stampede at the city exits as everyone tries to crawl their way out before they get swallowed. Inside the silent palace, the king is stuck in bed while his advisors watch their legacy burn. Outside, a massive wall of black smoke is slowly erasing the horizon. Arthur manages to crawl through a secret wartime tunnel to escape the slaughter. He looks back at the smoke rising from his home, realizing the emergency exit only came in handy for the kingdom's funeral. He just sits there in the dirt, watching his life's work vanish. He starts spiraling, wondering how a prince like him ended up in the dirt like a commoner. He has no idea where he's going, or if his father even survived the collapse. Eventually, he just turns his back on the ruins and decides that everything is over. The monsters aren't chasing him, so he assumes that charm he stole from Marielle is actually working. He pulls his hood low to hide his face and starts walking toward the nearest town. He needs to find a new place to hide before the sun goes down and the shadows get long. He stumbles across a camp full of people huddling around a fire in the woods. Even after losing everything, he still looks down on them as filthy lowlifes. He can't believe scavengers have already moved into the area while the capital is still burning. The men in the camp are too busy staring at the black miasma choking the palace to notice him. They're making jokes about the city being eaten alive by some giant entity. Arthur realizes this is his best chance to sneak past while their eyes are glued to the horizon. Arthur thinks he is slick hiding in the woods, but a voice from the shadows asks him why he is in such a rush. A pack of scavengers surround him and immediately clock his expensive cloak. They start eyeing his gear and wondering if even his shoes are made of gems before they pull a knife. The situation gets ugly fast as they start stripping him of his valuables. Our boy Arthur can only scream in the dark, wondering how a royal prince ended up getting mugged by the people he used to rule. His life flashes before his eyes, taking him back to his days as a pampered kid in the palace. Once upon a time, he actually had big dreams of being the light of the kingdom. He spent his childhood trying to stay positive while watching King of Roydera's deal with failing health. The palace gossip was brutal, and Arthur accidentally overheard the staff trashing his mother. They called her a tyrant who bullied everyone around her and said her final illness was just karma. He tried to hide his anger, but hearing the people mock his family changed something inside him. King of Roydaris tried to brush it off, claiming the commoners and officials just couldn't see how noble his mother really was. The King of Roydaris knelt down to give him a life lesson, telling him that people are only ugly because they are complicated. He told Arthur that a real leader has to accept that mess and lead them anyway. Flashback to the good old days when Arthur was just a kid trying to prove he was ready for the throne. He tries to act tough and tells his father he already knows how things work, but the king can see right through the act. Arthur remembers his father promising to love his wife even if the whole world turned against her. Looking back, Arthur realizes he was a total coward for never finding the strength to say those same words for Mira. He tries to justify his past actions by telling himself that leading with a commoner spirit only leads to failure. In his mind, his father's noble kindness was just a weak excuse that limited his potential. Elsewhere, the public is finally waking up and realizing they were played by Arthur's fake saint propaganda. The crowd is absolutely toxic, pointing at the palace and calling the prince a total laughingstock. Our boy is still stuck in his god complex, imagining the entire population sitting in the palm of his hand. He watches Mira and Tyr walk away, clearly annoyed that he can no longer control them. Back in the present, a dirty and exhausted Arthur is huddled among the survivors. A random commoner offers him a piece of bread, having no idea he is actually feeding the prince who caused all this mess. The refugees realize the kingdom has zero chance of stopping the monster horde. Since every town is closing its gates to outsiders, the group decides to make a break for the northern border before they get cornered. The survivors are pushing their horses to the limit, planning to dump the animals and run on foot the moment they collapse. One traveler breaks the mood by warning the group that they might not even make it to the border. He claims to have reliable information that the situation is far worse than they realized. Elsewhere in the camp, a hooded Arthur overhears the life-changing rumor that Mira is the true saint and is currently saving a village over the mountain. The news hits him hard as he mutters her name in a state of complete shock. His internal crisis is cut short when a giant monster suddenly lunges out of the shadows to ambush the refugees. Back in the village, Jader is getting the full report on the capital's fall. The survivors explain that at first the monsters just smashed buildings, but then the horde was pushed forward by the sheer weight of new creatures emerging from the dead. People scrambled for high ground or any basement they could find, hoping the castle walls would hold. Flashback to the streets, where the screams told a much darker story as the city was overrun in seconds. The trauma is real for these folks. One guy is still holding out hope for his missing mom, while others just stare blankly, wondering how they even survived the escape. The scene is a mess of grief and confusion. A woman admits she has no idea how they made it this far after the outer walls collapsed and the monsters started picking people off. Jader thanks them for the intel, but his face says it all. There is zero time to celebrate because those monsters are definitely following the scent of the survivors right to their doorstep. Elsewhere, the crowd continues to grow as more refugees trickle in. Raul hangs back by the door, his ears perking up at the mention of a mysterious black-haired saint named Ariano. Inside the makeshift clinic, Mira is hitting a wall. She tells the team that simple healing magic won't cut it for these complex illnesses, and they desperately need actual medical knowledge to save everyone. Raul stays by her side, reminding her that this battle against the plague is a race against time. He tells her it's okay to sit down since she doesn't need to hide how exhausted she is. Mira isn't backing down though. She looks him in the eye and insists that since the people are the ones suffering, she has to keep her head high. She wants to be honest and tell everyone that she's the one who took down the magical barriers. But Raul shuts that down immediately, warning her that the public isn't stable enough to handle a confession like that. The weight of the secret clearly hangs heavy on her. Elsewhere, Prince Jader steps up to the plate. He introduces himself to the restless crowd as the second prince, trying to take charge of the situation. It is a powder keg of a scene as hundreds of refugees cram into this tiny village. The tension between the commoners and the crown is at an all-time high thanks to the kingdom's recent failures. Jader clenches his fist, knowing the odds are stacked against him. He wonders if the words of a prince even mean anything to people who have lost everything. Raul mentions the saint who ruined the capital while the two of them head toward the stairs. A sudden chill runs through Mira as she senses a dark presence closing in. The refugees scream that the enemy has arrived while the rest of the group braces for the worst. Jader is hit by an instinctive wave of dread and worries they might already be too late to stop the coming slaughter. Mira detects a massive swarm hitting the southern perimeter and realizes they are out of time. The sheer number of enemies is enough to make her break into a cold sweat. Raul puts a hand on her shoulder and tells her he is ready to step in. He warns her that if the barrier takes too much heat, everyone will be left wide open. Mira gives the signal and lets her magic fly. Pillars of light erupt across the horizon as she links every barrier in the region together. She stands tall in front of the group and tells them to stay calm. The new wall is officially up, and this village is now under her protection. Raul kept it real, noting that while Mira did not hesitate, her stamina was already hitting its limit. It was a simple calculation, but one that put them on a ticking clock. He turned to the nearby scouts and told them he would provide the cover they needed. It was time to get to work, and he was not about to let any of these guys slack off. Watching the scene unfold, Jader felt a deep sense of respect for Mira's courage. Her willingness to act was a wake-up call that hit him harder than he expected. He realized they all needed to learn from her example because the people were watching. If they lost the support of someone like her, there would be nothing left for them even if they managed to survive. The crowd was far from convinced, with whispers of doubt already spreading through the ranks. Some wondered if the safety they were promised was even real or just another staged performance. Suspicion began to rot the mood as people questioned why she had hidden her identity for so long. They started to wonder if the lies Ariano told about her might actually have some truth to them. A few voices tried to argue for logic, asking where they would even run if they chose to leave now. The tension reached a boiling point as the desperate survivors realized that waiting for a miracle was no longer an option. This bearded dude steps up and tells everyone to quit the drama because they are basically sabotaging themselves. The crowd is finally cooling off as they realize how bad they messed up. It is a total mess as people start arguing about who to trust. Some are worried about surviving while others are busy calling out the self-righteous vibes in the group. Our bearded bro keeps it real and reminds the group that Mira never stopped helping them. Even though things were tense, she was the one holding it down while they were busy catching feelings. He tells them they do not have to be best friends, but they cannot expect a miracle to happen overnight. This man is done sitting on the sidelines and is officially ready to pay back his tab. Elsewhere, Raul is already in commander mode and breaking down the strategy for Mira. He knows they are on a clock and needs to finish this fight before the damage gets out of hand. A tactical map shows the swarm is basically trying to sandwich them from the south. Defending the whole perimeter is a trap that would just leave Mira's mana tank completely on empty. The big brain play is to open a gap in the barrier and lure the monsters into a single point. It is a classic funnel move, and the village squad is already posted up and ready to delete anything that comes through. Raul breaks down the plan and explains that clearing the field will let the barrier recharge. Once the tank is full, Mira can drop a purification wave to wipe out every monster in the area. Mira is worried about the sheer number of enemies coming their way. Raul tells her he will handle the combat while she focuses on the heavy lifting with the magic and barrier operation. Raul hits her with a confident smile and tells her to trust him. Mira reminds him not to overdo it because he still needs to survive and make it back to his hometown. The refugees are finally stepping up. The bearded leader and the rest of the group ask if there is any way they can help carry the burden. Raul is trying to act tough while Mira keeps the mood light. She tells him that if they are still able to show off, they have plenty of gas left in the tank. Raul says that looking miserable will not stop the monsters and they cannot let the survivors become meat shields. Mira looks back at the crowd and promises she will give it everything she has to make sure this never happens again. She flashes a bright smile and tells everyone that she feels much better now. Our MC tells the group to stop worrying because she is the strongest one here. A few survivors look toward the horizon in shock as the situation escalates. Jader walks toward the defense line while the bearded leader says they are finally ready to pay back their debt. Our boy Jader admits he is just a normal guy who cannot even lift a heavy axe. He mentions doing anything for Mira before catching himself and apologizing for the random talk. The monster swarm continues to grow in the distance. Realizing their limits, the group decides to focus on the long-term repayment they owe their savior. Local fighters get into position as the survivors watch from the sidelines. They realize that being saved means they now have a duty to spread that same kindness to others. Mira stands alone in the field and begins her ritual. She closes her eyes and tells the crowd that the real priority is protecting themselves and the people standing right beside them. Jader encourages the anxious crowd to hold hands and start talking to the villagers. He wants everyone to share their strength so the whole community can grow stronger together. This dude Jader steps up with a confident smile and a hand over his heart. He promises to rebuild the kingdom into a place where people can finally live in peace again. Raul locks in and tells his squad to get ready because the enemies are finally here. He is not letting them advance another inch. Our boy Jader steps up and promises the crowd that they are all going to survive this together. Mira is shook by his sudden main character energy as he vows that no one else has to die today. The squad charges into the storm as lightning rips across the sky. The world blurs as Raul's past catches up to him. He admits he was just as lost as anyone else back then. All he wanted was to connect, but the fear was just too strong. Searching for answers through glory never worked out. Real strength comes from trusting the people around him. He finds the courage to reach out and take someone's hand again. The battlefield is pure chaos as the monsters swarm the front lines. Defenders hold their ground with everything they have. A massive shadow looms over the horizon as the next wave approaches. From the heights, Mira watches over the struggle while the bearded leader rallies the troops. He orders everyone to keep a steady rotation and focus on endurance. As long as the barrier holds, the civilians stay safe. Raul tells the archers to make the most of the Saint's protection. The defense is solid enough that they can afford to lean on her power for now. He keeps his eyes on the prize and refuses to get complacent. Back to the day it all went wrong. A young Raul stands frozen in terror as the world burns. He clenches his teeth, hating that he was the only one who was left behind. 10 years of searching for courage from the outside, and he was still just a lonely survivor. But that ends today. Raul charges into the thick of it, ready to leave his past in the dirt. Jiri tries to distract the kids with some stinky snacks while the adults just want to go home to their villages. The ruined streets are a bleak reminder of what they have lost. Floating high above the destruction, our MC manages the purification barrier while the people on the ground tend to the wounded. Raul keeps his eyes on the skyline, waiting for the next threat to appear. The monster swarm shows no signs of stopping. Every time the defenders take one down, more seem to take its place, forcing the front line to push past their exhaustion. Hope is starting to run thin as the soldiers look to our saint for any kind of miracle. Raul does not wait for a sign and prepares to dive straight into the center of the fray. The bearded leader finally joins the fight to provide more power to the defense. With their biggest heavy hitter on the field, they decide to stop waiting and start pushing back. Doubt starts to creep in as the sheer numbers of the enemy become overwhelming. They start to wonder if their call for help actually reached anyone, or if they are just fighting a losing battle. Years ago, long before he was a warrior, our boy was just a kid who wanted to help. That instinct to protect others has been there since the very beginning. Raul flashes a confident grin at the squad before heading out. Trust me, I will definitely be back. He finally gets why he has to be the one to stand his ground. A flashback shows our boy face to face with the lonely kid he used to be. He realizes that he was the one stuck in that dark place for all those years. Distrust and despair used to be his entire world. All he ever wanted was for someone to look his way and tell him they could walk the path together. His whole life shifted the second Mira reached out her hand to pull him from the shadows. By accepting her help, he finally found the strength to be himself. He dives headfirst into the swarm and starts wrecking every monster in sight. This is not just a fight for survival, it is his way of finally being saved. Mira watches in disbelief as the number of monsters starts dropping like flies. He really showed up, and the sight of him leading the charge brings a surge of hope to the front lines. The last decade of pain feels like a fair trade for this single moment of clarity. He charges forward with everything he has, finally at peace with the man he has become. Veteran soldiers are finally seeing the true influence of a lone wolf like Raul. He is operating on an entirely different level, carving a path through the monster swarm like it is nothing. Raul's sincerity is the only reason this crowd is even standing their ground. He has built up a heavy debt of gratitude by saving people in the shadows, and the carnage around them is proof of his skills. The flow of power feels right, giving Mira the confidence that they can actually win this. Light signals flashing across the mountainside confirm the plan is live, and the soldiers start their disciplined retreat to lure the monsters in. Leadership suits the guy as he takes point on the front line. He makes it clear that the squad just needs to follow his lead while he handles the heavy lifting. The counterattack hits with enough force to send the monsters reeling. Raul does not let up for a second, anticipating the next move before it even happens. The atmosphere grows impossibly heavy as Mira struggles to maintain her connection. To make matters worse, Raul finds himself locked out of his magic right when he needs it most. A giant shadow descends on the group, signaling a threat that was not part of the plan. This variant monster is on a scale they were not prepared for. This variant monster is a straight-up nightmare, covered in jagged armor and looking ready to end the world. It looms over the battlefield like a final boss that skipped the tutorial and went straight for the kill. Raul is out here doing the most, charging the beast with zero hesitation to buy everyone some time. He shouts that he is finally following in his brother's footsteps to become the protector he was always meant to be. The sight of him risking everything hits Mira like a truck, forcing her to realize just how far our boy is willing to go for her. Being born a princess and a saint made life feel like a scripted event where every move was planned for her. She remembers the weight of those expectations and how the crown never really felt like it belonged to her in the first place. She reflects on the lonely path she walked before Raul entered the picture and changed her entire world. If he had not been there to catch her when she was falling, she probably would have given up on this kingdom a long time ago. Looking back at their journey, she realizes how much those small moments of connection actually meant to her soul. Even when things were at their absolute worst, having him by her side made the burden of being a saint feel just a little lighter. A simple touch is all it takes to bridge the gap between their two worlds once and for all. She is tired of living in the shadows and decides that now is the time to stand her ground and fight for what matters. The air crackles with pure energy as she finally stops holding back her true potential. Raul made his choice to return home, and now she is making hers to protect the one person who never stopped believing in her. Mira is done playing nice and tells everyone to stay out of her way. Her power starts to surge as she finally goes full saint mode. A massive pillar of light erupts from the battlefield, reaching all the way to the clouds. The purification wave is finally live. The scouts in the watchtower can't believe their eyes as the entire landscape is cleared. Every single monster in the area has been erased, leaving Mira totally drained. Raul just sits there with a big grin, laughing at how forceful her power is. He admits she really is as cool as they come. Deep in the dungeons of the falling castle, a man reflects on his choices while the world burns above. He wonders if he was always destined for this cage, or if someone else would have just taken his place anyway. His dark thoughts are interrupted by a small voice from outside the bars. A young girl with flowers in her hair peers in, asking why there are no snacks today. He tells her the food is gone for good, but she is not bothered at all. She brags about charming the guards for extra treats, and even tries to give him tips on how to play people. Looking away, she admits how much she despised the orphanage. The only options there were becoming a soldier or being sold, and she found both futures totally boring. It was a dark and smelly hole where the kids were only fed impossible dreams. They had to survive on stories because their plates were always empty. Despite the misery, she loved the sound of those sparkling words. The fairy tales were the only beautiful things in her life. Saint stories were her absolute favorite, so when she was told she was actually a saint, she threw her past away to become the perfect masterpiece. He leaned back with a bitter smirk, envying how she could see a prison cell as a paradise. After calling her out for slacking off, he asked if she ever regretted the role she played. Sitting on opposite sides of a stone pillar, he told her she would have to apologize to everyone for her lies. Our boy gave a faint smile and promised to consider it if he ever saw the outside world again. She didn't miss a beat, insisting they would definitely escape since they were still breathing. He pointed out that she had ruined the lives of people just like him. She just pouted and claimed she was innocent, saying she only followed orders from the prince and the count. She let out a bright laugh. Since they were in this together, she offered to apologize right alongside him. She started planning a comeback, promising to be so cute that the public would have no choice but to forgive them. He just stared at the wall, clearly not convinced by her cute saint strategy. He stayed silent as her words echoed in the cell. She urged him to just give it a try, promising she would stay by his side. Long ago, the high priest explains that every person has a specific role to play in the grand design of the world. Mariel tries to lighten the mood with a silly apology, showing she hasn't lost her spark even in the dark. Even behind bars, she stays cheerful while dreaming of their next big move together. Back in the present, the survivors walk through the peaceful fields and realize they all made it through the night. Every fighter is drained after the clash, promising they never want to experience something that intense ever again. Standing among his companions, Raul finally feels like he belongs somewhere. The bearded leader offers his respect, thanking our boy for leading them through the storm. The bearded leader is already looking for his next paycheck. He is stunned that a stone-cold guy like Raul actually knows how to smile. Physically, Mira feels great, but her saintly magic is completely burnt out for now. The survivors in the distance are finally getting a chance to breathe. Jader is in full prince mode, vowing that their struggle will be told as a legend for generations. The crowd is still stuck between the high of victory and the shock of survival. Our MC is definitely not used to being called a legend yet. She is just trying to stay grounded while everyone processes the chaos. Strolling through the fields, Jader admits he only led the people because Mira and Raul paved the way. He feels like he was just riding the momentum of their bravery. Mira does not let him stay down on himself. She insists his empathy was the exact thing the survivors needed to keep going. This dude is finally stepping into his role as a leader. Rebuilding the kingdom will not be easy, but he is determined to start the journey. Mira smiles warmly, telling Jader that this is just the beginning for the kingdom. She truly believes he is the one meant to lead them toward a brighter future. The praise clearly hits deep, and Jader starts turning bright red as he looks away. He begins to stutter, asking if she would consider staying by his side. Suddenly, he grabs her hands with a look of intense determination. He shouts that he will grow into a man worthy of standing beside her, promising to bring up the topic of marriage again when he is ready. He insists this is not about politics, but a personal vow from his own heart. Mira is left completely speechless, her face flushed as she tries to process the sudden proposal. Before she can even respond, the prince apologizes for his rudeness and sprints away at full speed. Mira is left standing in the field, confused and reaching out as she tries to make sense of the chaos. She stands alone for a moment, wondering what she was even planning to say next. Her thoughts are cut short when a villager calls out, begging the saint to help with the wounded because they are short on hands. Realizing her magic might be spent but her work isn't finished, she rushes toward the makeshift infirmary. Our MC knows there is still plenty she can do to help the survivors rebuild. Mira walks through the village and realizes her brother's arrival means her time here is almost up. She is likely headed back to the kingdom with the army, but her mind is still stuck on the wreckage they are leaving behind. Reality starts to sink in that this might be the end of the line for her and Raul. Their short but wild journey is coming to an abrupt close. Thinking back on the promise to stand side by side makes her smile. She realizes that despite his intensity, he really is just a protective brother at his core. The vibe goes south immediately as Arthur emerges from the shadows looking like a total mess. He walks forward with a smug grin, calling the whole situation a long farce. Our MC is frozen as Arthur dismisses the bystanders like he still owns the place. The villagers are trembling, barely able to even speak his name. One of the survivors is not buying the saint act anymore and openly calls the situation a deception. In the background, Arthur's grip tightens on the stolen charm. Arthur steps closer with a look that is straight out of a nightmare. He tells Mira he has been dying to see her, leaving our MC absolutely paralyzed with fear. Arthur lunges out of the darkness like a sleep paralysis demon. Reaching for our MC, he wears a face that says he has lost every single marble. Mira barely has time to react before a hand closes in, her only thought being to call out for Raul. We're throwing it way back to when young Arthur and Mira first met in the royal garden. The little prince hits a formal bow, introducing himself as the next in line while our girl just stands there clutching her teddy bear. Arthur is already laying it on thick, calling Mira's hair more dazzling than the moonlight. He's convinced that she's the beacon of hope his father always talked about. He goes full main character mode, gesturing to the sky while explaining how a saint cuts through the darkness. To him, her existence is the only thing keeping the world from falling into despair. Arthur looks up with a heavy expression, thinking about the people back home. He says that without her light, the commoners are just too paralyzed by fear to even move forward. The boy makes a huge vow, promising to become the light that guides the kingdom right by her side. He's got that determined look in his eyes like he's ready to take on the whole world. Suddenly the deep talk stops and he gets all shy, admitting he just really wants to be friends. Mira's eyes practically turn into sparkles as she hears the one thing she's always wanted. Our girl is genuinely touched, telling him it's her first time making a friend outside the castle walls. She calls his offer the best gift she could ever receive, and the wholesome vibes are officially off the charts. Young Mira hands over her bear with a shy smile. It is not much, but please take this as a token of our friendship. Arthur is genuinely moved and vows to treasure the gift forever in the garden. But the wholesome memory quickly gets swallowed by a dark shadow as the scene shifts. Our girl wakes up on the cold floor of a massive cathedral feeling completely disoriented. Arthur is already there casually asking if she is in pain while he watches her struggle. He sits back on a church pew and promises he has no intention of hurting her again. He even jokes about the hard floor being a bad bed like he is actually a concerned friend. This dude drops a chilling truth bomb with a smug grin. He claims that throwing her into exile was actually for her own protection and expects her to see the logic. He stands up and admits to framing her as a fake saint just to isolate her from the public. He is not even hiding the fact that he was the one pulling all the strings. As he walks away, he explains that the public just needed a villain to hate so they could feel safe. In his eyes, the entire tragedy was just a successful play that left everyone satisfied. Arthur laughs while mocking the refugees, claiming they will turn on their savior the second things get inconvenient. He thinks the crowd is just following whoever yells the loudest, and will snap without an outlet for their anger. This dude leans in with a look of pure malice. He claims that even family is just another tool to be manipulated by hypocrisy. He looks down on the commoners as nothing more than ignorant animals not even worth saving. Mira can only listen in silence as he continues his twisted rant. Suddenly, Arthur switches gears and starts acting like the hero of his own romance novel. He claims their reunion is fate and that her mercy is the only beacon he needs. He reaches out his hand and asks her to marry him again. In his head, a royal wedding is the ultimate fix for a broken kingdom. He wants the entire world and even her brother to watch them unite. To him, this is the perfect power play to get everyone back in line. Mira looks completely lost as she tries to process his logic. She starts to wonder if an ideal is just a place to start over rather than a finish line. Arthur shrugs and gestures lazily, dismissing any talk of morality as he summarizes her journey. He treats her entire ordeal like it was just a scripted prologue for his own grand design. Mira looks down and brushes her hair aside, admitting the treatment she received was completely trash. She found a sense of closure in the chaos, leaving her anger in the past where it belongs. Standing tall in the center of the church, she declares that no one has the right to steal another person's future. She is fully committed to her conviction of saving anyone she can. A small laugh escapes her as she realizes her motivations are actually pretty simple. She realized that just wanting to be a source of strength was enough to give her all the courage she needed. Arthur starts clapping with a wide grin, mockingly praising her for having such noble spirit. Mira looks him right in the eye and tells him she is actually glad they met. Beads of sweat roll down Arthur's face as he looks around in confusion. He is starting to lose his cool, unable to figure out why he is suddenly feeling so much pressure. Mira lowers herself into a graceful curtsy, telling him it was actually good that they met just now. The look in her eyes sends a chill down Arthur's spine as he realizes his simple plan is officially falling apart. Arthur is sweating buckets because his logic is totally failing him. He knows Mira should be out of power, but he is the one feeling like a cornered animal. Mira walks toward him with total main character energy. She wants to know why he abandoned the ideals he once claimed to live by. He tries to play it off by claiming the commoners just are not worth the effort. In his head, he is a misunderstood hero, but he is really just making excuses for his own cowardice. Mira brings up how his face went pale the moment the king was mentioned. Arthur tries to laugh it off as a shallow attempt to rattle him, but his nervous grin says otherwise. The moment she calls out his fear, this guy completely loses his cool and starts screaming. Mira just stands there and watches the meltdown, realizing she finally understands his true nature. She drops a truth bomb that hits him right where it hurts. He was always too terrified to look at himself and see a person who never moved forward a single step. It turns out he only surrounded himself with people he could look down on. He needed puppets to manipulate just to feel like he was actually in control of something. Arthur is trembling in pure terror. His father looms in the doorway, claiming this is all for his own comfort. Back in the past, young Mira walks forward with cold determination, telling him she will not forgive what he has done. Arthur has a breakdown, screaming for her to stay away. Mira stands over him with a calm gaze and tells him she does not actually hate him. She is doubling down on her choice to protect the kingdom and its people. The hall feels vast as Mira explains her motivation. She needed to see the world with her own eyes to know exactly what she was fighting for. Mira turns the focus back to Arthur and drops a surprisingly personal question. She asks if he still holds on to that old stuffed toy. This dude looks like he has seen a ghost. He can't even process the question, stammering out a confused response about how she could even know about that. Mira lets out a relaxed sigh and decides to move past the grudge. She admits that putting all the weight on him is unfair and offers a hand if he is ready to turn things around. Mira offers a hand to her former fiancé, choosing to move forward as friends instead of enemies. Arthur enters full panic mode and bolts out the door. Mira just watches the train wreck with a final goodbye. Raul blocks the exit with the coldest energy possible. He asks the prince if he has something to say for himself. Talk time is officially over. Raul delivers a punch that sends the prince flying into the wall. Raul drops to his knees to check on Mira. She is drained from the encounter but glad he was waiting nearby. Staring at the unconscious prince, Raul realizes they are two sides of the same coin. He sees the same lonely boy who did not trust anyone. The cavalry finally arrives to secure the area. They tie up the prince to keep things quiet before the public catches on. Raul stands by her side as she reflects on the vow she made leaving the capital. She promised herself she would never shed a single tear over this mess, no matter what happened. Seeing her hold it together, Raul just gives her a proud smirk. Mission accomplished, then. Mira beams with a smile, admitting she finally feels like the air is clear. In the quiet room, the old teddy bear stays behind on the floor. The scene shifts to a royal carriage rolling through the forest, while a voice wishes they could just reset the clock on life. Arthur has been wearing a mask since that day, never letting a single person see what is actually going on inside his head. Inside the ride, the king of Roideras admits he chose his own comfort over actually dealing with his son's mess. He knows there is no going back now, realizing his own cowardice let Arthur's fake persona fool the world for years. A cold voice cuts in, mocking the idea of trying to fix a grown man's personality this late in the game. Mira's brother King Leroyd scans a report and asks if the plan is really to hook Arthur up with the hidden saint just for politics. The king's strategy is to let Arthur believe he's in control so he stays motivated to play the hero. If the prince thinks he has outplayed his father, he will treat Mira like royalty just to keep his own status safe. A massive cover-up is only successful if the truth stays buried forever. Even a performance becomes history if no one is left to call it a lie. The old king is desperately hoping this charade might eventually turn into something real. But wishful thinking won't change the facts. Leroyd is done being polite and decides to drop some truth. He acknowledges the old man's struggle but refuses to sugarcoat the situation. He calls out the king for being selfish and dragging everyone into his family's mess. Running away from his failures has only made things worse for everyone else. Mira understands that royal duty comes before personal happiness. Still, she deserved a chance at a peaceful life before the kingdom's drama ruined it. Leroyd is disgusted that the king is gambling with his people and his own son to fix his mistakes. Trying to use Mira as a pawn was the final straw. He stares the old man down with ice in his eyes. He tells the king straight to his face that he has completely lost his edge. King Leroyd pulls up with the ultimate casual energy, acting like he did not just cause a scene by arriving with a whole army. He tells the exhausted survivors to go get some rest because his stay is only going to be a quick one anyway. As the king strolls through the camp, Mira finally calls out to him, realizing that everything her brother promised in the past was actually true. Down on the ground, Raul and Mira take a second to process the fact that their secret backup has finally gone public. The king looks down at his sister with a soft expression, apologizing for all the hardships she had to endure while they were apart. Mira goes in for an emotional hug but immediately regrets it when she slams right into his solid metal armor. Reunion time is officially over because it is finally time to get down to business and start talking. Raul just smirks at the king, clearly not surprised that the royal family has been playing a high-stakes game behind the scenes this whole time. Mira cannot help but ask the question that has been burning in her mind, wondering exactly how long her brother has been lurking in the shadows nearby. Leroy admits he has been watching from day one, because no sane ruler would ever let their princess travel to a neighboring country with just a single guard. He explains that while he kept his distance for political reasons, he stayed in the loop by sending secret messages to Raul. The king takes a seat and decides to lay all the cards on the table, ordering his men to bring in their important guest. He offers a warm smile and suggests they start the lore drop over a nice cup of tea. The secret defense plan finally comes to light. While the small group of adventurers held the center, the king's hidden army was thinning out the monster horde from the shadows. It turns out they had a direct line to the main force the whole time. A few undercover soldiers were hiding in plain sight, ready to call in the cavalry the moment things went south. Raul pieces it all together while Mira just focuses on her tea. He knew something was up the second she mentioned writing letters to her brother, since a banished saint shouldn't be able to mail a king. He had his doubts from the beginning, but a few sleepy comments from Mira after the dragon fight sealed the deal. The breadcrumbs were all there for him to follow. The hidden guards drop the act and ask Raul to keep protecting Mira. Every suspicious moment finally makes sense now that he knows they were his secret link to the Idas military. Leroy explains that magic communication in this kingdom is basically a laggy mess. It is low quality, easily blocked, and requires a chain of human relays just to send a simple status update. The heavy talk is cut short when a familiar face appears in the distance. Tur comes sprinting through the camp with zero chill and finally reunites with Mira. Leroy explains that a landslide wiped out their relay station, which is why the message chain snapped. The chaos of the monster attack forced everyone to pivot their plans on the fly. He clears the air about Tur, mentioning she was only ever meant to receive intel, not send it. He asks the group to go easy on her since she was kept in the dark until the very last second. The reunion is pure vibes as Tur finally catches her breath and stops worrying. She jokes about the king giving her the VIP treatment with a front row seat to all the action. Looking at the letter Mira sent, Leroy admits it was the spark he needed. That single piece of paper was enough to remind him exactly who his sister is. It turns out the shadow guards were playing a high-stakes game of tag. They struggled to maintain their distance without being seen, especially when the duo switched to horseback. Raul is not exactly thrilled about the Secret Service Act, asking why they felt the need to lurk so far away. He just wants to know why they did not just join up from the start, if they were going to follow anyway. Everyone settles in for some tea as the king makes his priorities clear. Politics can wait because, at the end of the day, Mira is his sister and he is not letting anyone touch her again. Leroy leans back with a casual grin. He decides that a bit of tough love is long overdue for the people back home. Down in the cathedral storage room, Arthur is left alone with nothing but his thoughts. He finds a strange sense of comfort in the tiny, confined space. He looks back on his life as a scripted performance for a faceless crowd. It was easier to ignore the humanity of others than to face the reality of his own failures. The silence is broken when Jader appears on the other side of the iron bars. Arthur looks at his brother and confesses that he spent his whole life being envious. Jader reflects on the cold distance between the first and second prince. Those rigid royal expectations were the only things that ever defined who he was supposed to be. Standing tall in the light, Jader finally speaks his truth to the brother sitting in the dark. He admits that more than anything, he just wanted to be like him. The second prince settles on a firm resolve. He is going to step up and handle the burdens that both his brother and father were too weak to carry. Jader finishes up his visit by untying his brother and handing over a letter. He wants Arthur to actually read it for once while the fallen prince continues his manic spiral. Leaving the cell behind, Jader offers a small smile and promises to be back soon. Arthur reaches through the bars as his brother departs, telling him to just do whatever he wants. Elsewhere, Leroy meets with the old king, who thanks him for his compassion. Leroy is ready to move forward now that their plans are in sync. The king admits he needed an outside perspective, because a ruler can never truly judge himself. The king vents about being stuck with the difficult roles, but Leroy reminds the old man that he was the one who started this mess. They both know Mira is destined for greatness, even if the king secretly hoped she could have had a normal life away from the royal scripts. He owns up to utilizing her just like every other ruler before him. If there is a curse to be had, he wants it to fall on his shoulders alone. The old king hands over the secret sauce, giving Leroy the keys to the kingdom's territory. These papers are Jader's emergency kit for when the status quo finally breaks. Leroy isn't pulling any punches, promising to be absolutely savage since Jader is officially on the throne track. The old man is down for the tough love, knowing it's exactly what the prince needs. Watching the carriage dip, the king is spiraling over Arthur's inability to trust anyone. He owns up to his massive failures, wishing he'd done more to protect Jader and his mother back then. The letters are doing all the heavy lifting as Jader walks away, carrying his father's desperate plea to save the nation. The old man's final wish is for him to keep Arthur from rotting in total loneliness. The weight of the message finally lands and Jader realizes just how much his father actually valued their chaotic family. It's a lot to process for a guy who used to be stuck in the shadows. Stepping back into the world, our boy is officially on the main quest now. Between fixing the damage and actually governing, the mountain he has to climb is looking steeper than ever. Mira is wrapping things up with her brother, making sure he knows how much his support meant to her. Leroy is staying in his lane as a helpful neighbor, and their ride is finally here to take them away. While the squad works on clearing the path, Leroy officially takes charge of the cleanup. He is stepping up as a king now, not just as a protective big brother. He gets deep, admitting that anyone could have played the king card. He does not feel like he has the right to flame Arthur or his father for how they spent their gold. With his eyes closed, he confesses that he is still keeping a few secrets from her. He knows he has not been completely transparent yet and asks for her patience. Mira is not stressed at all and just hits him with a warm smile. She reminds him that she already told him the mystery does not bother her one bit. Leroy is genuinely impressed by how much she has matured over the last year. The whole village comes out to wave as the carriage finally hits the road for the long journey home. Our king switches gears, mentioning he came here for 2 specific reasons. He just got a fresh report regarding the second lead on his list. The intel shows that Arthur has some major gaps in his memory when it comes to Mira. Turns out his twisted personality is not even a curse, it is just his natural vibe. The hammer finally drops on Mariel. Temple records prove she only has basic healing magic, which is nowhere near enough to call her a saint. Count Diaro is sweating bullets after betting everything on a fraud. The charm Mariel whipped up was just barely enough to keep Arthur moving until he reached the village. Realizing the charm is a dead battery, the Count finally sees the truth. The sudden loss of power was the only proof he needed to know he was played. Across the entire region, the monster horde has vanished into thin air. Survivors are reporting that the entire swarm just deleted itself without leaving a single trace. All eyes are on the mysterious black-haired Saint Ariano. She is the newest player on the board and the one being credited with the miracle. This rabbit hole goes back 10 years to the fall of the Redai Kingdom. A mysterious woman has been pulling the strings behind every fake saint scam since then. Using Roidaras as bait is the final play to flush the culprit out of the shadows. Once they are identified, they can finally put an end to this long game. The investigation was finally closing in. Leroy wasn't taking any chances and planned to crush everyone involved. Ariano stayed quiet, acting as the ultimate smoking gun. Time for a pivot. The king ordered a garrison to stay behind for crowd control before heading home. He knew having Rawl on his side was a major win. Edis was officially calling. Leroy wanted the prince to come back for a formal thank you. Rawl respected the offer, but his work here wasn't done yet. Leaving them alone wasn't an option for the king. Our girl Mira jumped in with a solution, offering to be the official bodyguard. She kept the vibes positive with a big smile. According to her, the best way to stay safe was to just protect each other. The carriage was packed, but Mira wasn't moving. Handing over a letter for her mom, she told the nervous guards she was staying on the road. Standing her ground with her arms wide. There was still a new government to watch over, and she wasn't leaving until the job was done. Mira tells her brother it is time to stop playing bodyguard and get back to his royal duties. Leroy's vibe is heavy with worry for the rest of the family waiting back at the palace. Rawl can't help but crack up at the way Mira is bossing around a king. He wonders when our girl became such a natural at the whole royal command thing. The king finally throws in the towel and agrees to leave her safety in Rawl's hands. He is already planning a support network to make sure they aren't on their own. Leroy makes it clear that the door is always open if she ever changes her mind. This was the exact closure Mira needed to finally move forward without any lingering guilt. No time for long goodbyes. Mira is already leading the way toward their next adventure. Watching them walk away, Leroy admits that seeing his sister grow up is a bittersweet feeling. He senses a new pressure coming from her that even he can't quite explain. Rawl asks if she is really sure about staying, even though he is clearly happy to have her along. The contract is still the perfect excuse for her to keep this journey going just a little bit longer. Mira notices Rawl suddenly looking away and asks why he is acting so weird. He stammers a bit, claiming he was just lost in thought for a second. He explains that in his homeland of Redai, they still use an ancient title for a saint that is different from the usual one. Mira is curious, asking him what that special name is. Our boy flashes a rare, genuine smile, telling her it is a name that suits her way better than being called a fake saint. He officially calls her the Guardian Saint. Mira stands still, the words hitting her differently as she finally finds a title worth living up to.
That's it for today, guys.
If you made it to the end, comment Mira so I know you're real ones. Don't forget to like and subscribe, it really helps the channel grow. Until then, keep on cooking.